Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. Live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Today, Predators. We are live at Bridgestone Arena, where the Predators tonight are taking on the LA Kings. TNT broadcast today, which means we're off the air at 5:30 because the puck drops at 6:30. Barry Trotz will join us at 5 o'clock today. So Jared versus Joe will be pushed back to Thursday. And so, again, this is a biggie as far as the standings are concerned. If we're still thinking standings, I don't know. That'll be a discussion for Barry when he sits down with us at 5 o'clock. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
I have some news to report.
Please do.
Mad Dog Russo will be joining our program next Monday at 5 o'clock.
Booyah.
From Radio Row at the Super Bowl.
The dog.
So the doggy will be joining us, which I am very, very, very excited about. So we got tons of great, we got tons. If you thought the Super Bowl was good last year, a lot of the same guys that we brought on last year that you guys liked, we're bringing them on again this year. And we're going to bring on even more, again, like dog. We're going to bring on some really good ones, so we're really excited about that. So I want to start on this today. A lot of Titans fans have been talking about this. I don't get into free agency talk the way that everybody else does, when the team stinks in November and they go on the website and say, who's going to be a free agent next year? And then it's like, oh, my God, Lamar Jackson is going to be a free agent next year. It's like, guys, those guys are never going to be free. Right? This is not the NBA where a guy is like, I don't want to play anymore in Milwaukee. I'm leaving. I'm going to the Lakers or the Knicks. The NFL, one thing that those owners will never, ever, ever give away is the franchise tag. In any collective bargaining agreement negotiation they ever have, they'll never give it away because it is the ultimate leverage to keep the best players on your team. Joe Burrow will never get to free agency unless a team wants Joe Burrow to get to free agency. The only quarterback whose team really, really wanted to keep him and lost him in free agency in the last 10 years was Tom Brady, and that was because Robert Kraft felt like he owed it to Tom Brady to allow him to leave without the tag. So I don't get into that. So during the course of the year when the Titans were stinking, a bunch of you were going out there and looking at T. Higgins and saying, T. Higgins, Jared, he's going to be a free agent this year. We need to get T. Higgins. And I was like, okay, let's not get excited about who's going to be a free agent because those guys might get tagged, and then those guys are going to sign long-term deals. And basically what's happened to every single receiver whose name isn't A.J. Brown over the last 5 years. Well, guess what? T. Higgins is probably going to be on another team now in 2024. And the reason why I say this is because the Bengals' de facto GM, Duke Tobin, who is not technically the general manager. He's got some vice president of personnel, blah, 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 reports to the cheap Brown family. Duke Tobin sat down with the team's website at the Senior Bowl that he chose to go to. And while Tobin wouldn't, and this is what they said, this was Bengals.com, quote, Tobin wouldn't comment on the possibility of giving T. Higgins the franchise tag and then trading him, or of Jamar Chase's stated desire to sign after Vikings Pro Bowl wide receiver Justin Jefferson. Tobin said, quote, we like Jamar. He's in our long-term plans. He is a high-level player in this league, and we want to keep those kinds of players on our team, Tobin said. So again, with Chase, it is he's in our long-term plans. We love Jamar. We want Jamar. We're going to find a way to sign Jamar. Don't anybody bother us about Jamar. Jamar will be a Bengal. The second part of what Duke Tobin said was this, quote, I want T. Higgins back. Everyone on our team would like T. Higgins back. There's a pie, and there are things we can do and can't do because of it. We'll see. Notice a difference? Chase, oh, we like Jamar. He's in our long-term plans. He's a high-level player. There's no talk when it comes to Jamar Chase about, well, we'll have to see if Jamar Chase is going to be a Bengal. No. Jamar Chase is going to be a Bengal. Higgins, we'd like him back. We'll see. And many of you will hear that talk about the pie. And you'll think that they're talking about the salary cap, but he's not. The pie is the money. It is the budget that the Brown family, the notoriously cheap ownership of the Cincinnati Bengals, it is the Browns family budget for what they're willing to spend on the Bengals. So I looked it up today. The Bengals are currently 11th in cash committed for 2024, which is way high by Cincinnati Bengals standards. Floyd used to joke with me that if the Bengals were under the cap, which they always were every year by $4 or $5 million or whatever, what they would do is they would take that money and amongst the Brown family be like, $1 million for you, $1 million for you, $1 million for you, $1 million for you. So again, we're talking about the cheapos here. And I know they've had to spend some money because they got good, but let's not kid ourselves. The Bengals are 11th in cash committed, which again is way high. But $111 million of their $187 million that's committed for next year is on offense. So that means that at some point they got 70-something million allocated to defense, which means the Bengals will have to spend some money on defense. And then, of course, they have to pay Jamar Chase. And Jamar Chase, whenever he signs, and again, it will probably come after Justin Jefferson signs, and my guess would be that Jefferson will either sign right before free agency or right before the draft. But that money for Jamar Chase will probably cost them about $30 million in cash. And again, $30 million in cash in year one of a record-setting extension, which Jamar Chase will sign. Jamar Chase will be the richest wide receiver in NFL history when he signs. That's about $30 million. So now they're, again, well into the top 10. Signing T. Higgins probably would cost them another $25 million or more in cash this year, which let's say it's $30 million for Chase, $25 million for Higgins. Now we're talking about $242 million in cash committed before a single defensive player. That would make them second in the NFL in cash spending to Cleveland at $268. Now, we know Cleveland will just light money on fire. They don't care. But again, we're talking about the Bengals. And we're talking about the Bengals with no home playoff revenue this year. We're talking about the Bengals who are now accustomed to having Joe Burrow, so it's not like you sell extra tickets when it comes to Joe. I'm sorry, guys, but just what I know of the Bengals, they will not have the second highest payroll in the NFL, which means a tag and trade is most likely, given that I don't think the Bengals would let Higgins leave for nothing. So now the question is, do you still want him? Because again, when everybody was looking at T. Higgins as a potential possibility and everybody was saying, Jared, we have got to get T. Higgins. That's the wide receiver we need, Jared T. Higgins. I said, hold on now. It's a lot more complicated than T. Higgins will hit free agency, and you can go and give T. Higgins a 5-year, $128 million contract or whatever it would end up being, something in that ballpark. It is a lot more complicated than that. Because Cincinnati, again, I don't think they're going to let him leave for nothing. And because Jamar Chase wants to sign after Justin Jefferson, and Justin Jefferson will probably sign before the draft or before free agency or whatever, that'll give them some time. So they can tag Higgins, and the money that they would end up giving Chase will be allocated to Higgins temporarily, and then they trade Higgins. But nobody is going to give up the 7th overall pick for T. Higgins. So now the question is, would you give up your 2nd rounder for T. Higgins? How would you get him? Again, I think we're all in agreement, right? T. Higgins is pretty good, but not 7th overall pick and $125 million good. Do you give up your 2nd round pick for T. Higgins? Or do you think that you can draft the next T. Higgins with your 2nd round pick? So that's the complicated question here. Instead of the, Jared, we need T. Higgins. I agree. T. Higgins would be great on the Titans because if you get T. Higgins in his prime, you can kind of treat him like A.J. Brown a little bit and say, all right, Will, here's the deal. I want you to throw that ball up in the air, and I want you to let number 5 go up in the air and catch the football because he can do that. But at the same time, how are you going to get him? Would you trade Jeffrey Simmons for him if they were open to doing that? Again, I don't know what your priorities are. So in order to make a deal work, in order to get T. Higgins on the football team next year, the Titans have to either do one of two things. Get creative, which is not out of the realm of possibility. And we can talk all day about, well, what if you trade down in the first round and add a second rounder in for this season, and then trade that second rounder that you added this season for T. Higgins, and then give T. Higgins the contract? Or what if you use your first rounder next season, which I would be against, by the way, using your first rounder in 2025 in order to make a deal? You see what I'm saying? Like, we can get creative and talk about all the possibilities or whatever. Or you can treat him like he's Justin Jefferson and deal the 7th overall pick for him, and I'm not willing to do that when I could probably draft somebody better and cheaper with the 7th overall pick. But the reality is this. I don't think T. Higgins is going to be on the Bengals next year. Just when I see their de facto guy in charge, again, at the Senior Bowl, saying there's a pie, and there are things we can do and things we can't do because of that pie. We'll see on T. Higgins. And I look at their budget, and I see that in order to make Chase and Higgins work this year, the Bengals would have to, and again, this isn't about cap money. This isn't about, well, signing bonus, extended out over the years, no, this is, do you want to have the second highest payroll in the NFL? Because that's what it takes to have the second best quarterback in the NFL, the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, another probably top 5 because he's going to be signing a new deal right here, level contract at receiver in the NFL, and a top of the market left tackle. And guys, we know the Bengals. They're not going to have the second highest payroll in the NFL. So T. Higgins, I think, will be available. So now we can talk about it and what it would take in order for you to get there. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in, 615-737-1025. And while we're on the topic of wide receiver, I saw a comparison to one of these draft players that I like. I mean, I like the player, but I saw a comparison. And I have heard some of you, by the way, poo-poo this player, that I thought, if that guy's there at 7 and that comparison's accurate, you're going to pass on him? And he might be there at 7. We'll get to that coming up next as well. 615-737-1025. We are rocking and rolling today from Bridgestone Arena, again, where the Preds take on the LA Kings tonight on TNT with a 6:30 start right here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. And be sure to tune into Vandy basketball. That's right, tonight as they take on Auburn on the road. Pregame at 7:30. Tip-off is at 8. They'll be on 94.9 The Fan, and coverage is available on the 94.9 The Fan app. And Vandy women's basketball tomorrow takes on Ole Miss at home. Pregame at 6:15. Tip-off at 6:30. And again, coverage also available on the 94.9 The Fan app.
even in a game when we got battered up front and Joe got sacked 9 times and probably hit 15. And, we really, outside of one drive and one explosive play, didn't really do much in that game. And we get a turnover late in the game, and now they're going to play 2-man, and Jamar goes and wins versus 2-man and wins the game. And so those moments have always stuck with me. When a push comes to shove, do you want to have someone that can go score touchdowns and go win versus tight coverage? And in that debate, the Sewell-Chase debate, which was, again, 2 players that you knew, whichever one we take is probably going to be a 10-time Pro Bowler, first-team All-Pro style player. Mm-hmm. And Panay was fantastic, and we loved him. And Jamar was fantastic, and we loved him. And the debate went back and forth, and which one do we need? And I landed on the Jamar Chase side because I saw what he could do for our offense. The difference there to me is, like, Jamar was an elite player. And in that moment for our team in Cincinnati, the elite player that can score touchdowns versus the elite player that can protect the quarterback with the style of quarterback that we had and the style of offense that we ran, we took the guy that could score touchdowns.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan on our show last week. And he's telling you, like, hey, Jamar Chase was an elite player. And the elite player that can score touchdowns to him is more important than the elite player that does not score touchdowns. Like that right there, I think, Ian, we can enter that fact into evidence, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, at this point, if we're debating between an elite player that scores touchdowns or an elite player that does not score touchdowns, he is going to want the elite player that scores touchdowns. Let's go ahead and add that, okay?
True, yes.
So I actually don't think T. Higgins is the elite player that we're talking about here, like when it comes to Jamar Chase. So Daniel Jeremiah is NFL Network's guru when it comes to the draft. He's their Mel Kiper Jr. And yesterday he put out his first top 50 at NFL.com. And I clicked it just to kind of see, what these guys have. I don't think Daniel Jeremiah is the end-all, be-all. But as this is one man's opinion, this one man happens to make a very good living off of just doing this. So I'm like, okay, let's see. He's got Caleb Williams 1, Marvin Harrison Jr. 2. No surprise there. Number 3, Washington wide receiver Rome Odunze. Now, I really didn't watch Washington football much this year, but after watching Rome Odunze in the Pac-12 championship game and Rome Odunze in the Sugar Bowl against Texas, I loved him. Now, I was a little disappointed he didn't do more in the national championship game, but I did love him. Love him. And here's what Daniel Jeremiah wrote at NFL Network. And again, let's pretend for a second that Daniel Jeremiah is our director of college scouting. Because, again, this is what he does for a living. And he's been doing it a long time. Quote, Odunze is a big athletic wideout with exceptional hands. He can play outside or in the slot. He is refined and polished in everything he does on the field. He uses a variety of releases at the line of scrimmage and is a clean route runner. He uses his strength to lean into defenders before separating out of the break point. He thrives in traffic, possessing the ability to pluck the football and absorb big shots over the middle of the field. He makes some incredible adjustments on poorly thrown balls, which with Levis, that might be something he may have to do. He tracks naturally over his shoulder. After the catch, he is very tough to bring down and has some nifty make-miss ability, and he plays with a ton of passion and energy. So all good things, right? That would make sense. He's ranked as the 3rd highest player. Daniel Jeremiah finishes up by saying, overall, Rome Odunze is a complete player and reminds me of Larry Fitzgerald coming out of college. Okay. Again, let's pretend that Daniel Jeremiah is our director of college scouting, and we own the Titans. And our director of college scouting, who's been doing this for 15 years or however long he's been doing this, comes to us and says, that guy reminds me of Larry Fitzgerald. Do you all still demand a left tackle with the 7th overall pick? Because I feel like passing on Larry Fitzgerald for a tackle would be reckless. Which, by the way, is what Al Davis and Norv Turner did in the 2004 draft. They drafted a tackle out of Iowa by the name of Robert Gallery. Number 1, Eli Manning. Number 3, Larry Fitzgerald. Number 2, Robert Gallery. And I'm not saying that Joe Alt, who you all are in love with, I'm not saying that he is Robert Gallery or he's not Robert Gallery. I have no idea. I'm sure he'll probably have a better career because it's hard to have a worse career than Robert Gallery did. But again, we're talking about the comparison to Larry Fitzgerald, a first ballot Hall of Famer. If you have a chance to pick a guy with the 7th overall pick who is Larry Fitzgerald, who your director of college scouting or your player pro personnel or your GM or whatever, if you have the ability to draft the next Larry Fitzgerald, you'd be stupid not to do that. And again, your coach has made it abundantly clear that even if you have no line in front of your quarterback, even if your non-existent offensive line has gotten your quarterback hurt the year before, that he'd rather take Larry Fitzgerald at wide receiver than drafting a tackle. Because he told us that last week. By the way, here's the 2004 draft. Eli Manning 1, Robert Gallery 2, Larry Fitzgerald, Phillip Rivers, Sean Taylor, Kellen Winslow, Roy Williams, D'Angelo Hall, and then it really got to Reggie Williams at 9 for another Scarbini. Ben Roethlisberger, 11. Holy smokes, what a draft. Whew. Vince Wilfork, just an incredible draft. And again, at the top of the draft, that's where most of the best players are, right away. So I know everybody gets on here and says, Jared, we need a tackle in the first round. I heard PK this morning. I heard him talking about how I think they have to take a left tackle. And it was like, well, what if they take a left tackle later in the draft? Well, I don't know what the rest of the draft says. Again, I don't study these prospects for a living. That's not what I do. And I don't pretend to do that. But I do like Roma Dunze. And Daniel Jeremiah does do this for a living. And again, he's comparing him to Larry Fitzgerald. And I've got to believe that one of these receivers will be there with the 6th pick. In order for there not to be a receiver, with the 7th pick, in order for there to not be a receiver at 7, it has to go quarterback, 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 receiver, receiver, receiver. That's it. And even then, I mean, I don't want to get Jared from Spring Hill all worked up because he'll text in as soon as he hears this, but I wouldn't rule out the tight end Brock Bowers from Georgia either. He's pretty good. So I'm just saying, for all you out there that are demanding tackles, I get it. That line stunk last year. And if they bring an Andre Dillard back or to go get the next Andre Dillard next season, it probably won't matter who plays wide receiver. But would you pass up Larry Fitzgerald because you got to have a tackle right now? I mean, look, Levis may not work out, but Larry Fitzgerald might be more important than Will Levis on this football team right now. So just keep that in mind. 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phone, 615-737-1025. Plus, one other thing Trevor actually brought to our attention yesterday as we try to think about how the Titans are going to approach this offseason. And, of course, your phones. We'll do that next. Live from Bridgestone Arena, where the Predators, again, are taking on the Kings tonight, 6:30 start time. It's Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
When you look at the mock drafts that are out right now, many of them have the top 6 picks as quarterbacks and pass catchers. Now, at that point, is there really that big of a difference between Joe Alt, who's probably the highest rated offensive tackle right now, and then you go down to Amarius Mims, the 5th rated on Mel Kiper's board from Georgia? Is there really that huge of a difference? There would be early in their career because Joe Alt is more NFL ready than Amarius Mims of Georgia because Mims hasn't played that many years. He just doesn't have that many starts under his belt. But from an athletic standpoint and just a natural ability standpoint, Mims is phenomenal. Would you be better off trading from that 7th spot down to 15th and get more picks and be able to add guys like this? I think that's something they'll really have to consider.
There you go. That was Trevor yesterday on our show, who basically said, like, there's a lot of tackles in this year's draft. And so I know Titans Twitter has their heart set on the left tackle at Notre Dame and the left tackle at Penn State. I actually saw Daniel Jeremiah has the left tackle at Oregon, tackle from Penn State. So what do you think about that, Twitter? So again, Trevor's saying, you can wait on a tackle. What you can't wait on is a star receiver if they're there with that pick. So I would just, again, I keep telling everybody that yells at me all the time and says, tackle, 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 we need the tackle, go get the tackle, I want the tackle. I'm just like, guys, there are other places in this world where the Titans can get a tackle. It is not just with the 7th pick. They have to rush that card up there. And again, let's remember the coach. Because it sounds like what he's been telling us he's looking for is not Trent Williams. So if the board stacks where you can get the stud receiver and you can get a tackle that can start, like Michael Roos, let's do it. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. Caleb says, would you rather the Titans trade for T. Higgins or trade up for Marvin Harrison Jr.? So this is going to sound like an unpopular opinion. I am not as big on Marvin Harrison Jr. as the rest of the world is. Now, maybe I'll be wrong about that, and it's not like I've sat there and looked at it like I'm trying to be Mel Kiper or anything like that. I just don't think he's like the greatest wide receiver prospect I've ever, He's not Calvin Johnson at Georgia Tech, at least as far as I'm concerned. Now, Rome Odunze, I love that guy, and I do love Malik Neighbors at LSU. I don't think there's as big of a gap on those guys. But Ian and I were talking about this during the break. Because, again, you're going to have to give T. Higgins about $125 million, which I don't have a problem with. But if, again, my scout, my GM, whatever, they think that Rome Odunze, for instance, is the next Larry Fitzgerald, and he's there at 7, and I've traded for T. Higgins, and I still have that 7th pick, which I assume the Titans will, I'm still taking the other receiver. Then I'm going to have both of them and DeAndre Hopkins. And I'm fine with that. Does not bother me at all. One texter goes, T. Higgins, why? Because he's from Tennessee? When are they going to draft Joe Milton? Well, T. Higgins didn't play on Tennessee's team. T. Higgins is from the state of Tennessee. I don't care about that. Have I ever cared about that? I went to Louisville. Will Levis went to Kentucky. I don't care about that. I don't care about any of that. I care about who's good at football. I don't care about any of the other stuff you guys are talking about. None of that stuff. I couldn't give a rat's ass about any of that. Chris from McEwen says, Jared, what I think is reckless would be to not pick a tackle with the 7th pick. You can't run or pass without blocking these stud defensive ends pressuring the ball in today's NFL. Even if the guy reminded someone of Larry Fitzgerald, it doesn't mean it's Larry Fitzgerald, which I do understand the point that's being made there. But I guess what I would argue is that all the time these guys bust. So it could remind Daniel Jeremiah one way or another. It could remind him of Larry Fitzgerald. Again, doesn't mean that he is Larry Fitzgerald, but I'm just making the argument that if your scouting director told you that Larry Fitzgerald was out there and you didn't take him, you'd be crazy. And a lot of you guys are going to be this, we need a tackle because we got to block. And if we can't block, then we can. I hear you on all of that. The problem with that is that what if the seventh tackle, you could get a decent tackle at 19? Or you could sign a decent tackle in free agency, a la what the Bengals tried to do that Brian Callahan said they wanted to do. Like, you can say that all you want, but the coach has already told you, yeah, in the past, I went the other way on that. Texture says, Jared, don't get me wrong, I like Roma Dunze. But let's not get carried away with these expert comparisons. They compared Burks with A.J. Brown, and we've all seen how that worked out. So the general manager chooses not to go to the Senior Bowl, and you guys all tell me, well, he's letting his scouts do all the work. He's letting his scouts do the work, and then his scouts will come back to him, which is fine. Now, those are John Robinson's scouts, but again, that's fine. But then you can't tell me when I'm using Daniel Jeremiah in this instance as a scout or a scouting director or, again, somebody that works for us. If he works for us and I'm the GM or I'm the owner or whatever, and he works for us, so we pay him a lot of money and we believe in him, and apparently you guys want to believe the scouts and everything else because you don't care that the GM's not at the Senior Bowl. If that's the case, then when these guys tell us we're using Daniel Jeremiah in this exercise as one of your own experts, if he's telling us, Mr. Stillman, that is Larry Fitzgerald, then we have to take that seriously. I have no idea if Roma Dunze is Larry Fitzgerald or not, but I'm using this for that exercise. That's the difference. Now, Josh from Columbia says, after hearing that Trevor clip, he thinks that if the Titans don't take a wide receiver at 7, he's going to be mad. I'm like, whoa now. What did they take the tight end from Georgia? Anybody got a problem with the tight end from Georgia? I don't have a problem with the tight end from Georgia. Michael's up next here on the program. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Michael?
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
So, quick question before that. Do you think that the top 3 picks of this year are going to all be quarterback?
Yes.
Okay, so with that being said, how much do you think it would theoretically cost to move up from 7 to 4 to take someone like Marvin Harrison or Brock Bowers?
Well, I don't think
I'm not saying that's what they should do or that's realistic. I just wanted to know what you got the whole Jimmy Johnson trade chart, so I just wanted to get spitball that off of you real quick.
So, I mean, the trade chart is like a reference point, where teams will try to argue with one another. The thing is, thank you, Michael, is that if Arizona's at 4, and everybody thinks Arizona's taking Marvin Harrison Jr. with the 4th pick. And so let's say Arizona really, really wants to take Marvin Harrison Jr. Then when you call and you try to trade up to 4, what you'll have is you'll have all the math to say, okay, this is what the value from 7 to 4 is. And they'll say, well, we want the players, so if you're going to do this, then you got to give us more, which is what exactly happened last year with Will Anderson Jr. See, Houston had Will Anderson Jr. as the highest player on their board, and Arizona had Will Anderson Jr. as the highest player on their board. And Houston knew it. So they knew that if they didn't take Will Anderson second, then Arizona was going to take him third. Well, then Houston caught wind that the Titans were trying to trade up to 3 because I guess the Titans can't shut their mouths. And so Houston caught wind that the Titans were trying to take their quarterback. So then they had that discussion of, well, we like Will Anderson more than we like the quarterback. But if we don't take the quarterback, our rival is going to take the quarterback. What do we do? And they decided the answer was take the quarterback, and if you don't get Will Anderson, you're not going to get the best player on your board. But they really wanted Will Anderson, and so they called up to Arizona, and they said, what will it take for us to get Will Anderson? And Arizona said, it's going to take a mountain. And Houston said, okay, let's do it. So if you really want to do that, and he's the top player on Arizona's board, it is going to freaking cost you. And I don't think that Marvin Harrison's that good. You could be right, but especially if again, it depends like what the difference is. 7 out of 10 is apparently like the best a prospect can be, from what I've been told by Floyd when they would do the board. And so he was like, Eddie George is a 7, that kind of player. So let's say that Marvin Harrison is a 7. The question is, what is Malik Neighbors? And what is Roma Dunze? on that board. Because if Roma Dunze is a 6.95, or he's also a 7, now why would you trade up to 4? You trade up to 5, take less in order to get that guy, or you could wait for one of those guys to come to you. 615-737-1025. We got a bunch of your phones, of course, at 615-737-1025. Plus, Chris Sanders will join us next. His thoughts so far on the Titans offseason. We will do that coming up next here on our program. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. That's right. You know I love Hiller. They've been taking care of my home for years and years and years and years and years. And I would never, ever have anybody else take care of my home because they can't do it like Hiller does. 100% satisfaction with Hiller. Happy you'll be here. The service is free. And again, I know that because I use Hiller at my home. Hiller offers true transparency pricing, which means that Hiller will line item every part of the job up front. So a homeowner like me or you can easily understand what we're paying for and why we're paying for it. It's so easy. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Stillman and Company, hey, Super Saturday is upcoming. I know everybody's excited about that. That's right. We'll be at the Super Bowl next week. And then on Saturday, 102.5, 106 through the game is officially inviting you to the first ever Super Saturday, February 10th at New Heights Brewery in Nashville from 1 to 5 for this fun, family-friendly soup fest benefiting the Nashville Predators Foundation. Enjoy live music, games for kids, and come sample soup from Mafiosos. 615 Chutney, Westin Hotel, Jaspers, and more to purchase tickets and to see all participating restaurants. Go to theGameNashville.com/soup, and you can also enter to win tickets to Super Saturday. Just texting the keyword soup at 615-737-1025. Joined now by former Titans receiver Chris Sanders on our program. So, Chris, we don't know who the offensive coordinator is going to be. We don't know who the defensive coordinator is going to be. The Titans are letting guys go left and right off the coaching staff, although I don't think anybody should be surprised by that. What are your kind of initial thoughts on what the Titans coaching staff needs?
No, I mean, you want to get a guy, especially if you want to get an offensive coordinator, just like with Callahan, you want to make sure that he has the same philosophy that you have. I mean, the one thing that you want to bring in, you want to bring a guy that develops quarterbacks, and that's exactly what Callahan does. And the thing about it is, look at the philosophy that Callahan has. He says this. He says the teams that win are the teams that pass the ball the best. So you got to get a guy in here, an offensive coordinator that has the same philosophy you have. So the thing about it is, I know you've been a little impatient because you want to hurry up and get a guy in. I'm really excited that they're really taking their time and making sure they're doing it the right way, because we can rush and just get somebody in there. I don't think they should do that. They should make sure that this is the right guy that fits their philosophy and fits the identity of the team.
So here's my thing, too, Chris, about the Titans and just kind of like this philosophy of what the coaching staff on offense. I don't care about who the offensive coordinator is or who the quarterback's coach is or any of that, because Callahan is the quarterback coach. And Callahan is the offensive coordinator. And everybody else that's around Callahan, they're just going to be supporting him, but he is the offense.
Right.
And so I couldn't give a rat's ass who they hired because, again, it's his offense. He's calling the plays. Your thoughts?
Yeah, but you still want to have an OC in there. You want to have somebody to put together a game plan and put an extra mind in that position. I understand Callahan's going to call the plays. I understand he's going to have his real thumbprint on the offense. But at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with getting another OC in here to make sure that they cover all the bases. I know it sounds kind of silly to where Callahan's going to be calling the plays. He's going to come up with the philosophy. He's going to come up with the game plan. But then you're bringing the OC, and that's exactly what the OC does. I know it's kind of like a oxymoron, but at the end of the day, you have another brilliant mind that has the same vision, the same goals of what you want to do. So I just think it adds more fuel to the fire.
Sure, I don't disagree with any of that, but I don't care who it is.
Yeah, I mean, but
you know what I mean?
You kind of want to do, though, Jared, because you don't want to get nobody in here that has a different philosophy than what you have. Okay,
well, they're not going to do that.
I mean, I know it. That's what I'm just saying. You want to get somebody here. This is what Callahan loves. This is why I really love this guy. He wants a guy that's a great teacher, and also he wants to bring in somebody that articulates to the players to make sure they're in the right spot. And I think that's why they're making sure that this search is so important, because you just don't want to bring another OC in. You want to make sure he's a great teacher and he can articulate on what these players need to do. And I think it's important.
Former Titans receiver Chris Sanders is our guest here on the program. Chris, I'm struggling with something.
Wow, no, not again.
Rand Carthon's not at the Senior Bowl.
Oh, my goodness.
And I know that some GMs, I guess, don't go to the Senior Bowl, but a lot of GMs do go to the Senior Bowl. The GM that I worked with, you know as well as I do, he'd be at the Senior Bowl.
No doubt.
And I know it's a different NFL and everything else, but I just don't like it. And I don't like the fact that it's like everybody has to come up with their own excuse for why he's not at the Senior Bowl. And I don't like the fact that every time something is done that involves the GM one way or another, it's like we have to have this whole excuse fest to explain it. And again, if he's going to miss the Senior Bowl, like there should be a pretty good reason for that nobody. And yet I feel like everybody is shaming me into not liking it. And then I see Jerry Jones on TV at the Senior Bowl. So I don't know how to feel about this.
I mean, I understand how you feel, but here's the thing. This is where I know you're not gonna like this, but here's where you got to trust your coaches in your pro scout department. But here's the thing too, Jared, is you got to understand what made Rand Carthon so special. What made Rand Carthon get to this position is because he understands how to evaluate talent. So what's happening right now is you having your coaches that you trust, you have your pro scouting department to where you believe in. So they're going to go and gather up all the information, bring it all back to you, and then they're going to watch film, because at the end of the day, the pro scout department doesn't make the decision. Rand Carthon makes the decision, so he's going to make a decision with all the information that he's collected. He's going to gather all the film and, their height, their weight, and all that stuff. So I don't think it's a big problem because they're not going to make a decision on a kid if they don't know if he can be a great asset to this Tennessee Titans team.
Do you trust the scouts of the Tennessee Titans that much?
Right now I do, because I think there's a different vision right now, because now there's a different attitude. There's a different aura in the air to where I think that everybody's on the same page. It's not about, okay, I'm doing this all by myself and you do that. It's about saying, let's work together as a team. Here's a philosophy. Here's the identity. This is where we're going. And if everybody catches vision from the pro scout to the general manager to the head coach to the offensive coordinator to whoever they bring in, I think it'll be okay.
Man, I love you. Did you hear the comparison I made yesterday, Chris?
What'd you do?
About you?
What'd you say? I'm good looking?
No, I said that Dan Campbell, to me, is what would happen if you were a head coach in the NFL.
Let me tell you something. That's the reason why I love the coach. And the reason why I love the coach is I've been around a lot of great motivators, and some of the great motivators I've been around his name is John Kennedy. He was a strength and conditioning coach from when I was at the Ohio State. Because I came in as a kid, weighing about 147 pounds. I walked in, all the older guys were laughing at me, and he did this. He whispered in my ear. He said, "You're going to be great one day." So I took that motivation to when I coach wide receivers, we're going to be the best wide receivers. We're going to have a great technique. We're going to burst off the cut. We're going to lie with our eyes. Is a great motivator, because the thing about it is, I can teach you X and O's. I can teach you all those great things. I can teach you how to block. But if I got to scare you into making plays, then I can't do that. But if I can motivate you and you believe in my concept, you can believe in my philosophy, then we going to win. Listen, I coach at Montgomery Bell Academy. Got me all excited. To where we're not the fastest, we're not the strongest, we're not the most good-lookingest, but the good thing about it is I'm going to make those cats believe that they're the best receivers in the freaking state. That's why I love coaching, danggummit.
And yet, I always hear you say some crazy things on the pregame show.
What's the craziest thing I've ever said?
Which takes me back to Dan Campbell.
Why?
And that is, what do you make of the constant going for it the other night in the NFC Championship game?
So why you got a dog with
Well, look, I think the thing about Dan Campbell is that those guys love him so much that it's more than just like, he motivates me to play hard. It's more like I love him so much that I don't want to disappoint him, and I will do whatever it takes in order to do this guy right. And yet at the same time, I look at him on the sidelines making some of these decisions, and I'm like, you cannot win a Super Bowl doing the crazy stuff like that.
I agree with you on that, Jared, because I think sometimes we as coaches, we let our emotions get involved. Let's go for it. Let's win one for the Gipper. But at the end of the day, he can't let his emotions get to him. I know he's a great motivator, and I'm a great motivator, but I got to do what's best for the team. And if you look at those situations where you need to get a field goal and get a bigger lead, I got to put my emotions to the side. I got to make sure I kick the field goal as opposed to being led by my emotions. So I agree with you with that, Jared.
Oh, then I guess I owe you an apology, because I guess I figured you might have wanted to go for it because, again, you and Dan,
no,
to me, you're like Dan Campbell. So, okay, Chris Sanders, last one for you.
Sure.
Brady or Mahomes, you got to win one game. Who would you rather have at quarterback?
Oh, I'm gonna go with Tom Brady. And I know Mahomes is that dude. I know he's great. I know he's done some magical things. But, Tom Brady's just done it consistently over and over and over again. I mean, look at in the Super Bowl when the game's on the line against Atlanta. He does a great job. He's done it over. So I would go with Brady. But if the way that Mahomes is doing it, if you give me another year or two, I might go with Mahomes. But right now, go with Brady because he's consistently been doing it.
Chris Sanders, he is the best. He is the Dan Campbell of the Stillman and Company program. Chris.
Appreciate you, brother. Love you, man.
Love you, too.
All
Chris
right,
Sanders
bye-bye.
joining us as he always does on the program. So Chris does not have a problem with Rand Carthon not being at the Senior Bowl. I've been thinking about this for the last 20 however hours since that one texter texted in that Rand Carthon was not at the Senior Bowl, and I was like, what? What? He's not at the Senior Bowl. And I've been thinking, and I'm seeing both sides of this. And I know how I feel. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Bridgestone Arena, Predators tonight against the LA Kings, 6:30 start time. Barry Trotz here at 5 o'clock. So yesterday, while we were on the program, somebody texted in the text line and said that Titans general manager Rand Carthon was not at the Senior Bowl. And I thought that there's no way that can be true. Like, there's no way. Ian, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I assume that you probably felt the same way when the initial Rand Carthon's not at the Senior Bowl?
I think most people assume the GM would be there, but.
Okay. And so, yeah, I couldn't believe it. And then I checked around and it was like, yeah, he's not there. He might go down later this week. I don't know. Chad Brinker's there. And I was like, what? The GM is not at the Senior Bowl where they get to meet with these players, where they get to spend time with these players, where they get to all these things, like they get to watch them in person and everything else? The GM? And you have to remember, this show used to be Jared and the GM. And I know this. This GM on Jared and the GM would be at the Senior Bowl. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. In fact, his daughter-in-law texted me when we teased this segment, and she said FR would have been there with the scouts at the Senior Bowl. And so the more I think about this, the more I don't like it. The more I'm like, wait a minute, this team has no talent on it. They need to get good in the draft. And the guy who was just given full authority of the roster is not at the Senior Bowl? But I am also open to the idea that things are done differently nowadays than they used to be. And the game has changed. And I feel like teams across the league, not just the Titans, are trying to make scouting more of a numbers thing, more of an analytics thing. And it's like, you know, the Moneyball approach, right? Where all the old baseball guys with the dip in their mouth get all mad because they're like, we don't think this guy's swing is any good. I've been watching baseball for 55 years, and I know that a guy, when he's got a pop in his fastball like that, and this guy with his computer's trying to tell me what to do, and he likes Kevin Youkilis because he walks so much. And I'm like, I get it. It's a different era. They do things differently now, I guess. And then everybody keeps banging me over the head saying the Rams don't even send anybody to the combine, which I guess is true. Now, the Rams don't do any picking. You know, they trade all their picks anyways. This year they got some picks. So on one hand, I've got what I know, right? Which is like Floyd would be at the Senior Bowl. The Senior Bowl was important to Floyd. Every moment he got to talk to these prospects, you know, to get to know them, whatever it may be. You know, the Kevin Carter story is always a good one, where the Titans spent a lot of time with Kevin Carter leading up to the 95 draft. Even though they were going to pick McNair, they did pick McNair. 5 years later, Kevin Carter was available, and he had a bad reputation, and they knew that Kevin Carter wasn't a bad guy because they got to know him during the draft, and so they traded for Kevin Carter, and now Kevin Carter still does charity events here in Nashville and was a great Titan. So again, on one hand, I really don't like it. On the other hand, I do understand that people do things differently nowadays. And then this morning, I see Jerry freaking Jones at the Senior Bowl. 89-year-old, I have no idea how old Jerry is. 89, 85, 82, I don't care. Old man Jerry Jones is at the Senior Bowl.
He's 81.
81 years old. And every time Jerry has had the Cowboys on Hard Knocks, he starts it the same way every year, which makes me think that he does this every training camp, where he gets up in front of the team and he says, I could be anywhere I want to be in the world right now, and I want to be here at training camp with the Cowboys. And the players get all excited every time. And we all know there's truth in that, right? Like Jerry want to be there, Jerry do whatever he wants. And so Jerry Jones is at the Senior Bowl. We were talking about how the Bengals de facto GM came out and said that, you know, they want to keep Jamar Chase. We'll see on T. Higgins, because he talked to the team's website writer at the Senior Bowl I saw Diana Rossini tweeted out earlier today that, oh, there's all these coaches and GMs and everybody else here at the Senior Bowl. And so, again, on one hand, I don't like it. On another hand, I guess we're doing things differently, and the Rams don't send people out to the Senior Bowl. And so, I mean, it's obviously important enough because the Titans sent Chad Brinker out there, but I guess it's just not important enough for Rand to be there. And then I see Jerry Jones, and I get enraged because, quite frankly, I mean, I'd like to have Jerry's players. I don't know how he does it, but I'd like to have Jerry Jones's players. You cannot disagree with the way that Jerry Jones has drafted over the years, which is amazing. This old cooter is 81 years old, and he's too busy doing all kinds of other stuff, and yet they draft Deron Bland in the 6th round, and there he is at the Senior Bowl. And then the other part of this. Personally, I feel kind of shamed. Like, I feel like, again, if you're asking what I think, or you're asking how I feel, sometimes the answer is not going to be what you want to hear. Sometimes the answer is going to be that I feel what I don't want to feel. But when it comes to Rand Carthon and me, every time I say anything, or I just point out bullcrap, and it was the same way with Vrabel when he was the coach too, by the way. Anytime I point this out, it's like I just get freaking tomahawked about like, oh, you hate Vrabel. You're mad at Vrabel because he got mad at you at the press conference, by the way, about the thing that clearly pissed the owner off. Because he got mad at you, so you hate Vrabel, so you, and I don't know how many times I have to say it. Nobody apparently is going to listen to me when I do say this. I don't care about any of that. I don't care if the Titans like me because I like the Titans. But I want the Titans to be good. That's all I want. And so here I am again in another situation where I'm looking at something that the Titans general manager is doing, just like, again, you know, the draft press conference last year about, hey, be positive, media, or whatever it may be that was just ridiculous. That press conference he did after they fired Vrabel, that was ridiculous. It could have been handled, and he didn't do a good job of it, and it's okay to admit that. But then every time I point it out where I'm like, this kind of seems screwed up, everybody gets mad at me. And I don't like everybody mad at me. I got enough people mad at me in my own life. I don't need everybody else mad at me. Now, I've never cared that much about everybody being mad at me, but I truly feel like I'm being shamed, like, Jared, you just hate Rand Carthon. And that's not true. He is the Titans GM, and I want him to do well because the Titans are my team. And I think every single one of you that follows me on Twitter, when the Titans are playing ball, I think every single one of you knows how emotionally invested I am in the Titans winning. So forget about all the being right or whatever it may be. And yet I know tomorrow TD's going to yell at me about this, even though TD loves the Senior Bowl. But I'm sure he's going to tell me that I'm crazy, just like Paul said I was crazy earlier today. I'm just telling you how I feel. And how I feel is I don't like it. I really don't like it. This is the Senior Bowl. This is the moment where you get to meet with these players. You get to see what they're about. You get to learn their personalities. You get to see them transitioning off the field. Do they run off the field? Do they walk off the field? Do they pick their teammates up? Do they not pick their teammates? Like those things. And I just know how much it meant to Floyd. And I know Floyd hasn't been a GM for 20 years or however long it's been. But it did matter to him. Like, it was a big deal. And when Jerry Jones, who is 81 years old and can do whatever he wants to do, thinks it's important enough for him to go to Mobile, Alabama, and sit down there with all these draft prospects, means I think it's kind of important. And I know everybody's got their own excuses about what Rand's doing or what Rand's not doing. It would be nice if he would hold a press conference in which he can actually answer questions. If you want to give him credit, and say that, You want to make the excuse, which might be a valid excuse in all seriousness, about that horrendous press conference he did after Vrabel being fired, about how it's like, well, he didn't want to, Amy made that decision, not him, and he was put in that spot and everything. That's fine. But now it is the offseason. He promised that he would talk when it's off-season time. Well, it's off-season time. Didn't talk last week. Normally, you know where these guys talk? The GMs, the head of player personnels, the Jerry Joneses, the everybody, you know where they talk? The Senior Bowl. So, I don't know. Again, a lot of you don't think this is a big deal. I guess the Rams don't think it's a big deal. They don't go to it. And Puka Nacua, they got him from the Senior Bowl last year. So I guess, they zoomed in and saw it and said, let's take him. I don't know. But I don't like it. That's all I can say. And you can be mad at me for not liking it. It's not personal. It is, I want the Titans to be good, and I think the GM goes to the Senior Bowl. And that's just, I guess, how I feel. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. I'm sure people want to weigh in on that. Now, there is one thing that I keep hearing Titan fans say is an excuse for this, and there may be some excuses that are valid. I have no idea. But there's one excuse you all keep making that is not an excuse, and you Titan fans are not allowed to use this because you have crapped on this exact thing. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Why is the scouting staff that was below John Robinson and helped in part lead to the roster problems that you have now, the right scouting staff to help you rebuild the roster?
Well, again, with everything, with this change, we got to continue to look at, at our scouting staff and what changes may or may not need to be made there. One thing when I was hired, I didn't know any of these guys when I came in, and I wanted to give them a chance to prove themselves because I have never worked with them, and I didn't want to just come in and just gut the place and have to start over and do all of that. And so we'll continue to, evaluate all phases of the organization. Like we have to get it right, and I'm confident that we will.
There you go. That was Rand Carthon, and that was a question Paul asked about. So your scouts, they're John Robinson's scouts. So one of the things I get in defense of Rand Carthon not being at the at the Senior Bowl is Jared. He's sending the scouts out there to do the work, and I'm like, okay. Now that excuse is not valid. If you want to use the excuse of, hey, he's working on the coaching staff, I think that's ridiculous. I think players are more important than coaches, and I think you have a head coach that can work on the coaching staff, which is why I'm not that mad that he's not there. You can also interview people at the Senior Bowl. Like Ian and I were talking about this off air about, would a coaching change derail Floyd and send Floyd, into, away from the Senior Bowl, and I was like, I bet you Floyd would say, you can meet me at the Senior Bowl and we can go over things there. But again, that's why you got a head coach. But if you want to use that excuse, you can use that. What you can't use, in my opinion, you, the Titan fans, cannot use he's letting the scouts handle it. Because for the most part, these are John Robinson's scouts. You guys hate John Robinson. And you guys hate John Robinson's scouts and anything that has to do with John Robinson and his drafts. And I'm looking at it right now. The 2022 draft. I have the 2022 training camp preview in front of me. And so the names at the top are different. Robinson's out. Vin Marino's there, but he's a cap guy. Robinson, Ryan Cowden, Monty Ossenford, all gone. Okay? So here are the guys that are still there that were there in 2022. Brian Gardner, still there, Director of Pro Scouting. So the Director of Pro Scouting that the Titans have is John Robinson's. John Salgi, Director of College Scouting, is still there. So John Robinson's Director of College Scouting is the Director of College Scouting there. Kevin Turks, Assistant Director of Pro Scouting, is still there, was there in 2022. Mike Boney is a national scout. He was there in 2022. He's still there. Dale Thompson is a national scout. He is still there. He was there in 2022. Brandon Taylor is a pro scout, or at least he was a pro scout in 2022. He's still there. Let's see. I wrote that last name. Not sure exactly what that is. I did not do a great job writing that. But Casey Callahan, let's see. Is he still there? Yes, he is. Casey Callahan was on John Robinson's scouting staff. Patrick Callaway, is he still there? Yes, he is. He was on John Robinson's staff. These are John Robinson's guys. This is John Robinson's scouting group with Chad Brinker and Anthony Robinson. So when you say, hey, I trust the scouts, you're trusting John Robinson's scouts. But you, the anti-John Robinson crew, you can't do that because you guys hate John Robinson. So I don't mind, if you don't have a problem with it because, the game has changed and so now Rand can do all the interviews virtually via Zoom to get to know these players, or that, he can watch the tape or watch it on, remotely or whatever. I'm not doubting that. It looks like that's what some of these other teams do. But you can't tell me that you trust the scouts because the scouts are John Robinson scouts. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Ellie has been waiting patiently. He's up next here on our program. What's up, Ellie?
Hey, what's up? If you're getting paid seven figures and you're going to be investing someone else's money, millions of dollars, and there have been mistakes made in the past regarding personality, and you could get them before they're coached up by their agents and everything of that sort, it is your duty to go down there. They've already made multiple mistakes. You should go there, look at the subtleties, bring a psychological expert, bring a doctor, watch them play, make sure there's no lingering causes that you got to be concerned about later. This is the time to do it, not before they get coached up and everything. This is pretty much malpractice. You got to learn from your mistakes. This is ridiculous. We don't want to make the same mistake we made with Caleb Farley. We don't want to make mistakes with Pink Panda. They've been made multiple mistakes because of not doing the due diligence. Why repeat history? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, I agree. I mean, it's Mobile, Alabama. It's 2 hours away. And again, if this were me, right? If I got hired to be general manager of the Titans and I made, let's say, $4 million, I don't know what the going rate is. I don't know what the Titans pay, but let's say it's $4 million, okay? And I signed a 4 or 5 year deal. So let's say a 5-year deal. So what? We're talking $20 million. At that point, money, it matters because if I get another contract, I'm getting another $20 million, and I like $20 million. But at that point, you're set for life probably with $20 million. You can make that last. But these guys do this stuff to win. That's why they do it. Belichick doesn't need the money, but they do it to win. Well, if my reputation is on the line here, if this is all about, hey, we got to go get the best players for the Tennessee Titans, and Jared Stillman, you are going to be in some deep trouble if you don't get these players because that's your job, I would make sure that I know what I'm picking, or at least that I feel like I know what I'm picking. And the best way for me to feel like I know the best way of what I'm picking is for me to be there. I understand collaboration and delegation. I understand it's important. But again, when I'm on that clock and we're deciding between the center from Oregon and the wide receiver from Texas and the inside backer from Valdosta State, I want every morsel of information that I can have. But that's just me. That's just me. And I mean, instead it's, yeah, I'll be here working on the coaching staff, and I'll let John Robinson's scouts come back and report to me as to what they think about who's there. And the reason, again, I feel shamed that it's like I'm making a big deal about this, but I do think that these kind of things are big deals. I think that the thoroughness of the scouting matters. I think that's a big deal. And quite frankly, I was shamed all season when it came to, I don't think everything's checking out over there with the Titans and Vrabel and Rand and the same page and this and that. And was that a shot at Rand? And was that not a shot? That was, Jared, you're making up nothing. Vrabel will be back. You will see. It will be. Remember, they even told Diana that they were going to bring Vrabel back. There's something that was said to me that I don't know if it was said in the Diana article or if it was just said to me and it wasn't said in the Diana article. But it was something that was said around that time that, I mean, whew. The fact that they said it then and have changed it, I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But I don't know if I can share that or not. But again, that's just me. I mean, this is a big deal to me. And I know that I've really thought, okay, are we just doing things differently nowadays? Is it just a different day and age, and that it's not important, and that it's not and is it not the, I can't get there, man. We're rolling with John Robinson's scouting staff and a GM who is not using every opportunity to interview the players. And even last year, he told Mike Keith at the Senior Bowl, in fact, Ian, do we have that cut? This was Rand Carthon last year. For some reason, the Titans decided to put some music under it because when you want to hear your GM give an interview, I guess you want to do a little dancing to elevator music at the same time. I don't know. But they put a little bit of music under this. But this was Mike Keith and Rand Carthon last year at the Senior Bowl.
You look at tape, you're going to go to the combine, and you'll do all the measurables. You'll have lots of interviews. but this is still really what it's all about, isn't it?
Oh yeah, 100%. And like I said, it's the cool thing is that we get these interviews. So the interviews, you have the informal and you have the formal. So now you get to get your hands on them, you get to talk ball with them, you get to see how they learn. And like you said, the tape is the tape. We'll have plenty of time to pour through that, but you only get limited interactions with these guys, and so you want to take advantage of that and really get to know them as people.
What about this year? By the way, and I mean no disrespect with what I'm about to say here, did that sound like porn music to you, Ian?
I don't know about that.
It sounded like porn music.
It was a little too modern, you know.
I can't. What are we? Play the cut again, please.
You look at tape, you're going to go to the combine and you'll do all the measurables, you'll have lots of interviews, but this is still really what it's all about, isn't it?
Oh,
I
yeah,
can't get
100%.
this music. What are we? Oh, my goodness gracious. All right, more your phone. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Plus, PK did bring this up today on the morning show, and the example he used needs to be shamed, and it will next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
So apparently, Rand Carthon is not down there at the Senior Bowl, which is driving Stilly nuts.
There's a lot of people
and a lot
asking,
of Titans
is it?
fans. Oh yeah, and a lot of Titans fans
so
really upset by the fact that he's
typical
not down there.
Stilly.
What do we make of Carthon not being at the Senior Bowl?
Irrelevant, virtually irrelevant. What's more important, putting together this staff or seeing some players that they'll see again at the Combine that they can watch thorough tape of? I would expect that they've got some scouts down there. Do we like a guy delegating some duties to the people that should have duties delegated to them? I don't know if Stillman's ever been to the Senior Bowl. I doubt it. But a lot of times, GMs at the Senior Bowl, when they're standing during practice, are having conversation. I watched Mike Tomlin at a Senior Bowl practice have a conversation with the dude the entire practice. I was standing next to them. He did not have eyes dedicated on what was going on the field. Rod Marinelli, when he got the Detroit job and one of the worst hires of all time, I went and interviewed him for 10 minutes during a Senior Bowl practice.
Yeah.
There you go. That was this morning. And I love how PK's like, Senior Bowl doesn't matter. Rod Marinelli didn't give a rat's ass about the Senior Bowl when he was the coach of Detroit. And it's like, see, now that makes me think the Senior Bowl matters more. Because Rod Marinelli is arguably the worst coach in the history of the NFL. He is Nathaniel Hackett bad. 3 seasons as head coach of the Lions. 3-13, 7-9. How they ever won 7 games in 2007, I'll never know. 0-16. The reason that they were able to draft Calvin Johnson and Matthew Stafford is because Marinelli's teams were so freaking bad. That's why they were able to do that. What is going on in here? Do you hear this, Ian?
A little.
What is going on here? I'm in Barrel House and I just hear this giant echo. This is going to drive me freaking crazy, but I guess we'll roll with it. I guess I'll just hear myself.
Sorry, I connected the arena feed. I will disconnect that from you.
Oh, that's on you?
I did that, yeah.
Why? Whatever. So I was like, this is going to be, do you know how hard it is to like talk while you hear yourself on like a 7-second delay? Like I was going to be struggling through that one there. Okay. Anywho, if you're going to do this, you cannot use Rod Marinelli. You cannot use Rod Marinelli as your example. He's the worst coach in NFL history. All right, phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Lance is up next and has been waiting patiently. What's up, Lance?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on my thoughts about Rand. I feel like he is qualified based on what I've seen. I like the fact that he actually played ball. But I really did not like the not wearing Titans gear in certain press conferences. Well, the few that we have had, especially the one after Vrabel got fired.
You talking about the T-hat?
Yeah, you work for the Titans. You're the general manager. I want to know that when I look at you. Maybe that's an unreasonable expectation, but it is an expectation I have, especially after Vrabel got fired. And I really didn't like the last comment he made where he said they were kind of getting on to him for not doing press conferences and stuff, and he said, as far as the way that I deal with communicating with people, I'm not going to change that. And then he ended the conference. I felt like that was something that Vrabel would say. I really didn't like that. I felt like that was kind of the opposite of being collaborative. So I'm not out on him, but there's just been some things that rubbed me the wrong way and kind of seemed like maybe he ain't the right dude to be the leader or isn't all in. But thanks.
Yeah, I will say that the T-hat thing, like, again, I feel shamed because every time I bring anything up that I don't like about Rand, it's like, you hate Rand. And it's not, again, it's like I said last week to TD, it's not personal, it's personnel. I don't like that, but it's like 97th on my list of things that bother me. And so I'm going to just kind of leave that alone, that T-hat. That's not at the top of my list that bothers me. Now, on the communication front, the one thing that I do think Rand needs to do a better job of is he does need to communicate with the fans and the media a lot better than he has in his first year as GM. We can sit here and argue that mistakes were made and that, this was Vrabel's fault, and, they missed on Andre Dillard, and, he's collaborating, and so now they'll collaborate better, and that's fine. I mean, that will ultimately decide what gets him fired or what doesn't if they can go get good players. But, I mean, to not do any press conferences during the year, even when they traded away Kevin Byard, when things were getting bad, when rumors were out there, when all of that was swirling around, to not do any press conferences, then to do a press conference where he basically got up there and he pled the fifth, and then to hire a coach, not answer any questions at the press conference, and now not go to the Senior Bowl, and now have this as another issue that is out there. Like, at some point, let's just say that the reason why he's not at the Senior Bowl is because it does matter to him that they get the coaching staff search right, and that he and Brian Callahan are going to work on that from the home base and whatever. I mean, that's not a good enough excuse for me, because they can do that in Mobile where a bunch of coaches are, and then it's like, all right, come to our suite at 11:30 at night after we're done talking to the players, and then we can meet with this coach. But let's just say that's the case. Well, tell people. Like, I mean, you can do that. Like, tell people. And that, I do think, needs to change. Like, whether the communication between him and Vrabel or whatever it was, I don't know, what that was, what that wasn't. I know that they said it was great until they fired him, and then, they still said it was great, but it was obvious that it wasn't. Different discussion. But as far as communicating with the fans, now that he's the one who's officially in charge, he can do a better job of that. And I think that's by choice, that he doesn't do that. I mean, that's just... One texter says, call ran out. He should be at the Senior Bowl. Full control of the roster. He needs to go do his job himself and not send Chad Capman Brinker. Hey, that's President Chad Brinker to you. One texter says, do all seniors attend and do all GMs attend? The answer is no. Some seniors do, some juniors do, and no on all GMs attending. I don't know how many GMs attend. I do know Jerry Jones is there, and I would like to have Jerry Jones' players, but I hear that the Rams don't do any draft things, so maybe the Rams, who got Puka Nacua in the 5th round, maybe they're the way to do it, and everybody should just do whatever they do. Texter says, I don't think you hate Ram, but you do seem to try anything and everything wrong and nothing he's done right. Well, I like Brian Callahan. I mean, I guess he hired Brian Callahan. You haven't heard me complain about that.
They'd made a good move at kicker.
Cost him 2 games.
Well, compared, it was a good move.
Speaking of kicker, have you heard the new excuse that's out there about why Dan Campbell went for it and didn't kick? The new excuse is that Badgley wasn't very good, which we all know.
We know, yeah, he was not good with the Titans, yeah.
We know Badgley can't kick. But guess what? If he's your kicker, he's your kicker. So you're telling me that on 4th and 3, we're going to go for it because Badgley's not a good kicker. What are you going to do on 4th and 8? You going to go for that too? Like, if you go into the game with him as your kicker, and it is a kicking situation, I don't care if the guy's Justin Tucker. The guy kicks.
Let her rip, Tater Chip.
Yes, that's what John Robinson said to us about Greg Joseph if the AFC Championship game in 2019 came down to a 52-yarder to win the game. Like, that's what you have to do. Like, okay, Badgley, you're in. I know you suck, but I need you to make this kick. And in the Lions games that I have been watching, which is their Cowboys game at the end of the season, and then their playoff games, Badgley's made his kicks. Now, I know that all those different I know that those are indoors, but if you don't think he can kick outdoors, then you go get another kicker. Like, there's a guy off the street you can get that can probably kick better. So then go get him because it's the NFC title game. But that was, yesterday and Monday. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company. Speaking of the coaching staff, I have said for the most part, I don't care who they hire as far as coaches are concerned. They can hire some Johnny Joseph from Nowheresville State to be the OC. It doesn't bother me because Brian Callahan's running the offense. But there's one trend in some of these interviews that I'm starting to see that does bother me. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game. Let's talk about Rob Gronkowski and FanDuel. That's right. Last year at the Super Bowl, Rob Gronkowski went wide left on FanDuel's Kick of Destiny. Now he's back for Kick of Destiny 2. And this time you can play along. All you have to do is choose if Gronk will make or miss the kick. What do the analytics say? Kidding. Get your free pick in right now, because if you're right, you'll win a share of $10 million in bonus bets. Everybody can get in on the action when Gronk takes his shot at redemption before Super Bowl 58. Whether your team make or team miss, just head to FanDuel Sportsbook to get your pick in. It's absolutely free. Then tune in before the game to see Gronk's kick live. You'll win a share of $10 million in bonus bets if you're right. New to FanDuel? Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM to sign up today and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. 21 and over and present in Tennessee. No purchase necessary. $10 million prize pool to be split evenly amongst all eligible participants who made the correct pick. Prize issue is not withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line 1-800-889-9789.
What is your philosophy on defense? We heard a lot about your offensive stuff, but what's your defense philosophy?
Yeah, there's a lot of things you talk defensively. We're working through, what that's going to look like for us by the types of people we're going to bring in. But at the end of the day, you got to have a very flexible and adaptable defense. You still have to be physical. You still have to run and hit. You have to tackle well. You have to force errors. There's a lot of things you can do that in the coverage structure game, in the pressure package game, where it makes it really hard on an offense. And so I know it gives me problems. I know the hard defenses to game plan against, and those are the things that I'm looking for in the style of defense we're going to play. Without getting too far down a bunch of characteristics, don't mean much until we put the pads on, but that's what I look for. Is what makes it hard for me as an offensive coach. That's the style of defense that I'm looking for.
There you go. That's Brian Callahan. And so the Titans, according to PK, are keeping Shane Bowen under contract right now. They're not firing him while they await a decision on what they're going to do at D.C. Now, they brought in one guy from the Ravens they're interviewing, one guy from the Browns they're interviewing, and I don't get into the minutia of like, oh, yeah, this guy was a defensive backs coach at this team, and I like their defensive back, so he must be a good coach. Because, Nathaniel Hackett was the offensive coordinator at Green Bay, and he is a total boob. So, as far as knowing what this, that, I don't know. But the one thing that does concern me is that these guys that he's bringing in outside of Shane Bowen don't have defensive coordinator experience. Now, I don't care about the offensive stuff. I don't care if you've got OC experience, quarterbacks coach experience. I don't care about that. He's running the offense. He was hired to do that. Good. But the thing about the guru offensive coach, is that part of the playbook is he farms out the defense. And that's what I want. So I want some old guy, or it can be Brandon Staley, who's relatively young, but I want somebody who's run the defense on one of these farmed out groups to come in here and run the defense. I want a Jim Schwartz type guy. I want a Wade Phillips type guy. I want a Raheem Morris type guy. I want a Vic Fangio type guy. I want a Brandon Staley type guy. Like when Robert Saleh gets fired from the Jets, that's the kind of guy I want running the defense. Not somebody who's never coordinated a defense before. This is not the we learn on the job crew. I mean, you focus on offense, get a defensive coach, and let him run the defense. And so, again, maybe he goes out and hires Belichick, the next great Belichick, or the next Belichick, I should say. But I'd feel more comfortable with Belichick being the defensive coordinator who's run a defense, because that's the formula with the guru coach. Not these guys they're interviewing without experience, but then again, they still have Rooney Rule requirements they have to meet, and they can interview a guy and then think that maybe he gets released out of a contract and now he's in a lesser role, or I don't know. But I would like a former DC who's got DC experience to run the defense. That's all I ask. Let's go to Jamie, who's up next here, 615-737-1025. What's up, Jamie?
Yes, sir. Driving home from work and you talking about Rand not going to the Senior Bowl, I'd like you to talk me off the ledge. It kind of gave me an epiphany. How confident are we that Rand doesn't want to go there because he may not have any idea what he's supposed to be looking for as far as judging talent? I feel like this guy's got the job. He preaches collaboration. Has there been one move that he has done that he can say, this is what I have done? Because I feel like if I took a job and I was totally unprepared, I'm going to say, yeah, it's a collaboration, because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'd just like to get your thoughts on that. Make me feel better about Rand as a GM. Thank you.
I think that right now, thank you, Jamie, I think right now the mistakes that happened last year, they're all being pinned on Vrabel. That's a great example of that. It's like, oh, no. Rand wanted to draft Zay Flowers, but they drafted Peter Skoronski instead. Well, is that because – so now that's Vrabel's fault, right? And some of it might be Vrabel's fault. I don't know. Andre Dillard, whose fault's that? I would say as far as, the moves where I can look at it and say, hey, that was a Rand move. I know Arden Key didn't get a bunch of sacks this year, and I know Arden Key is not as good as Vrabel made him out to be during training camp because he was just dominating Andre Dillard. Arden Key's a solid player. So I would argue that is the best move that we can unequivocally say that was a Rand Carthon move. And I know a lot of you are going to say Al Shire's better, but I can't I think Alshire's a backup. Those inside backers that they have in San Francisco, Warner and Greenlaw, those are starters. Like, that is a starting backer. Jim is in Gallatin, and he's up next here on our program. He's been waiting patiently. What's up, Jim?
Hey, how are you?
Good.
How about if Brock Bowers is available, we draft him?
So to me, and I appreciate your call, my dad and I were watching the AFC and NFC championship games this weekend, and we were talking about Travis Kelce in the AFC title game. And my dad was like, we were comparing Travis Kelce to Gronk. And my dad was saying that he thinks he likes Kelce more than Gronk. Just kind of typical stuff like, well, who would you rather have, whatever. And I think Brock Bowers might be the mix of those two guys. And again, those are two of the greatest tight ends, if not the two greatest tight ends in the history of the NFL. And Brock Bowers looks like he might be one of those kind of guys. That he really looks like it. And he's not super athletic. I mean, he's athletic, but he's not Kyle Pitts athletic, but that's okay. He's a different kind of tight end. I would not complain if they took Brock Bowers because I think he's an elite player, and I think he's going to score a lot of touchdowns, and I think he's going to block in the run game, and I think Brock Bowers is a really, really good player. And a lot of people talk about Brock Bowers. It seems like everybody's got Brock Bowers and the Chargers pinned in there saying like, oh, no, he's for sure going to the Chargers at 5. I don't know. I like him a lot, though. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Ian, the amount of people that have opinions on this University of Tennessee versus the NCAA supposed firefight that is coming up here actually shocks me. It truly shocks me. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios, Bridgestone Arena tonight. Predators taking on the LA Kings at 6:30 on TNT tonight. That's right. Very excited about that early start. Barry Trotz will be here in 1 hour. So yesterday the news dropped. Pat Forty at I almost said Yahoo Sports, his old employer. Pat Forty at Sports Illustrated dropped the nugget that the NCAA was investigating the University of Tennessee's football program. I read it and I thought fascinating. Now, I didn't know that the NCAA had much power anymore. I thought they kind of had given up on that. I thought Tennessee was kind of the example that they didn't have a lot of power anymore. And then I told you guys yesterday that I talked to Joe, who was reporting on this for The Athletic, and Joe said, this is not nothing. And Joe had more to write at The Athletic and more to say today on their program. And I, am kind of following the tea leaves here. So this isn't about paying players the way that Jeremy Pruitt did. This is about NIL, Nico Iamaleava. Did I get that right, Ian?
I think that sounded very good, yes.
Okay, Nico Iamaleava and the NIL deal. We know it's $8 million. Spire Sports, the NIL collective. And basically, as soon as the Pat Forty article came out, Tennessee dropped a huge statement that was like, we're going to fight this. Screw you, NCAA. Here we come. The lawyer for the collective is apparently some anti-NCAA lawyer. He's like the Johnny Cochran. When you're facing the NCAA, you bring him in. And he fired one out there that was like, the rules weren't even that way in 2022. They changed them, and it was 2021 when the deal was signed, and whatever. The specifics of this don't matter to me as much as kind of where we're headed with all of this, which is, I listened to a Tennessee fan yesterday tell me about this, and it's all like, this is bull crap. There's no way this is true. There's no way any of this is factual. There's no way any of this is possible. There's no way. And I'm like, but we haven't seen the complaint yet, right? I mean, Ian, correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't seen the complaint as far as this is concerned with Tennessee.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, so we don't really know what it is that Tennessee's in trouble for, except we know that this is part of it.
The only thing that Joe Rexrode was alluding to this morning, I guess in Donda Plowman's letter, she mentioned something about lack of institutional control.
And that's the biggie.
In the letter. And so that hasn't really been from the NCAA, but she put it in the letter, so people are kind of jumping to conclusions, I suppose.
Okay. So, again, we don't even know what it is. I have no opinion on this as far as whether or not Tennessee is guilty and should be on a bowl ban and deep trouble, or whether the NCAA is, in over their skis and it's not fair because this was the rule and that this was decided this day and UT wasn't even mentioned in his NIL agreement. I have no opinion. When Chad Withrow joins us on Friday, my guess is he will have an opinion. And my guess is, and I love him, but my guess is Chad is probably going to think UT's getting screwed on that front. Ian, would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. I am completely neutral here. I do not, if Tennessee gets screwed, it's not going to change my life. If Tennessee, skates by, I don't care. I'm not a Vanderbilt, Alabama fan that's like, the UT, throw them away. I'm not doing it. But I am incredibly fascinated by what is about to happen with all of this. Pat Forty, who broke the story, he's a good man. He was on Feinbaum yesterday. Here's what he said is coming next with this Tennessee NIL NCAA fight.
As a source put it to me who has some familiarity with this case, prepare for a firefight of epic proportion between the NCAA and the university and the Spire Group, which is the collective, it runs the collective, the Vol Club, volunteer club that has run the NIL efforts for Tennessee. So this has been described to me as quote-unquote major, quote-unquote big. So the scope of the violations could be considerable. The level of violations that could be alleged is expected to be level 1, level 2, which is the most significant kind and yield the biggest penalties. And in response, Tennessee is ready to fight fire with fire.
Isn't that exciting? Like, this is so exciting for so many different reasons. Number one, I don't know if the NCAA has any power anymore. And I don't even know if the NCAA knows if the NCAA has any power. The Supreme Court shot back and made NIL a thing when they sent a 9-0 decision down the pipe. And it basically said, I think it was Brett Kavanaugh who was the one that kind of was the most, his ruling or whatever, I don't know, his, what's it called, decision, his dissension, what, I don't know. But he said basically, like, if anything else comes in front of us, like, we're going to rule on the side of the players. So this stuff going to court, like, it's not going to go well for the NCAA. I don't think, but I don't know that. So I don't know what power the NCAA has. And I wonder if the NCAA, because supposedly they're taking on Florida State and Florida too, it's not just Tennessee. I think the NCAA has decided, like, hey, this is going to be Custer's last stand here. Like, this is going to be where we decide that we are going to try to enforce power over NIL, because if the courts tell us that we can't enforce power over NIL, then it's over. Then we're nothing but a basketball tournament scheduling company. That's all we are. So we need to, we need to flex our muscle, and we need to prove that we still exist and matter. And on the Tennessee front, they say they're going to fight fire with fire. I mean, sometimes when you fight fire with fire, sometimes you lose. And so if they try to go toe-to-toe with the NCAA, they might lose. And given the fact that they are repeat offenders, and not just repeat offenders from 10 years ago, but repeat offenders from 5 minutes ago, that's a big deal. And so when Pat Forty says, I talked to a source who said this Tennessee versus NCAA, whatever, I guess we can call it officially a lawsuit now, because didn't the Attorney General come out and say that they're suing the NCAA? Which is amazing that they can sue the NCAA when the NCAA hasn't even dropped the hammer on them yet. They've just said, they told Pat Forty that they were going to do it, I guess. But so, I mean, we're going to have courts and hands-on Bibles and everything else and Donde Plowman. And I got to tell you, I'm excited. I'm excited for what's next, because I'm excited to see if the NCAA still matters at all. That's what I want to know. Does the NCAA matter at all? Do the grown-ups have any authority anymore other than, well, we can play you on Thursday and Saturday in Des Moines, or we can put you Friday, Sunday in Phoenix? You're going to be the 5 seed playing the Jazz now to hire bad refs to run their basketball tournament? Because if they lose this and it gets to the courts, and the courts say, because it sounds like it's headed to the courts no matter what, and the courts side with the schools or the players or whatever, it's over. I mean, it kind of feels over now. But maybe this is their onside kick here. I don't know. I have no predisposition as to who's right or who's wrong. And the reason that I have no disposition is because I don't know any facts about this. And when a lawyer representing Tennessee's collective tells me something, that doesn't make it a fact. When the Tennessee chancellor puts out a statement, that doesn't make it a fact. When the NCAA alleges something and it's vague in what it is that they're alleging, and they tell it to Pat Forty, who puts it in an article at Sports Illustrated, that doesn't make it a fact. So I don't know any facts here. But it does sound like each side is gearing up, ready to go to war. And I can't wait to see how this process ends. I cannot wait to see the end of this. And I don't even know whose side I'm rooting for. Because once I know what the facts are, then I'll know what's fair. And then I'll decide that I'm going to root for fair. But in the meantime, apparently, get your popcorn ready. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get to some of your phones, 615-737-1025. And I got to say this for UT fans. There's 2 things that UT fans are doing. One, they are assuming innocence, which is natural. We didn't do that. And two, there's another element of this that is just absurd. We'll get to that in your phone. Stillman and Company. Let's talk about windows. That's right. The temperatures are nice and normal for February right now, which is not normally the case. And so when it gets really cold again, and I'm going to guess that it's probably going to get really cold again soon, Window Nation, that's who you want to be banking on. That's right. Actually, it looks like we should be okay for a little bit here, but Window Nation is the best. They can go ahead and take those windows. If you've got a cold draft at night when it gets cold and it's in the low 30s and all of a sudden you got to crank your heat up, well, you want to make sure that your windows are not allowing all that cool air in there. Put your hand on that window at night. If you feel like you're unnecessarily cranking up the heat every night, put your hand on that window, see how it feels. Because the pros at Window Nation will take great care of replacing those windows. WindowNation.com, and doing this is more affordable and easier than you think. No interest for 5 years and 50% off all window styles. Do not wait. Simply call 866-90-NATION or go to WindowNation.com. Again, that's no interest for 5 years and 50% off all window styles. Do not wait. 866-90-NATION, WindowNation.com.
By now, everybody has seen Donde Plowman's statement, and there's no question she was at the vanguard of that investigation, and she took a lot of heat for standing up, but she also got praise for it. But help me understand this, the lack of institutional control. And in her statement, Pat, she points out that the same group, not the same group, but the Committee on Infraction was praising her leadership just 6 months ago, and now they're coming after her. There was almost an inference there that we are now untouchable because you praised us. I realize that's not what she's saying, but am I wrong to try to read something? I realize your job isn't to read into her statement, but what did you make out of her statement?
Yeah, first of all, it was fiery for sure. Secondly, yeah, I think that basically Tennessee is trying to say, hey, we handled our business, and now you're saying we didn't handle our business. Well, yeah, that can be true because this is a totally separate thing, and I think the NCAA, without knowing specifics, because they have not issued a formal notice of allegations, that doesn't mean there hasn't been a draft notice or at least extensive communication between the school and the NCAA of what exactly they're facing. But if they come back and say, you did a nice job getting rid of Jeremy Pruitt and unearthing this stuff, that doesn't mean you were doing a nice job of policing your collective, so to speak.
There you go. That was Pat Forty on Feinbaum. Let me say this. Tennessee fans always think Tennessee's always in the right. Tennessee's always going to win every game. We know that. It is what it is. But the one thing that I find freaking preposterous is this idea that Tennessee got off, easy on the Jeremy Pruitt cheating because they were forthcoming. Now, I believe the reason they were forthcoming was so they could fire Jeremy Pruitt with cause and they could get away with it with not having to pay him, and quite frankly, that worked. But the NCAA said they were forthcoming, good for them. That does not excuse future cheating. And it's like Tennessee and their fans believe that it does. Like, what do you mean? We can't be in trouble for cheating. We were forthcoming about our cheating last time. So that would be like if Tony Soprano, for instance, was forthcoming about some loan sharking that he had done in the past with the feds, but had covered up the Bada Bing Club and what goes on there, saying, well, I helped you on the other stuff. That's not how this works. And if a Tennessee fan thinks that, oh, no, they praised us 6 months ago, yeah. And then apparently you cheated again according to them. And I don't know if you did or you didn't. And I'm not on your side, I'm not on their side. But to sit there and say, well, we were forthcoming 6 months ago, you liked us then, you should like us now, that's not how that works. And anybody who argues that's the case, and it sounds like Tennessee is arguing that's the case, that is intellectually dishonest. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. And this should be, by the way, a moment for the Jared Stillman hates UT crowd, because I have not taken the NCAA side. I haven't taken your side, but I am not taking the NCAA side. Boy, I'll tell you, some of the things you guys have been texting into the text line today is just so mean. Like, this was so much easier when Caroline read these so that she could kind of filter out some of the mean things. And they're not even mean about me. They're mean about Tennessee fans, and earlier today, Rand Carthon, and I can't, I can't read some of these things. One texter says, though it hasn't been mentioned, I wonder if Pruitt had something to do with the scandal. He did not. His scandal is in the past. And apparently, Tennessee did a wonderful job of fessing up to Jeremy Pruitt's screw-ups. Bravo, well done. That does not excuse future screw-ups. In fact, I don't think there's anything in which gives you a get-out-of-jail-free card, which is what Tennessee fans would be arguing about the way that they handled the last thing, would be, we deserve the benefit of the doubt here. What? That's not how that works. Texter said, Donde Plowman said in the letter that the rules weren't clear. They tried to meet in December, and the NCAA denied that request. Again, that's what she's alleging. It might be true. I have no idea. Let's wait until the NCAA brings a hammer down, and then we can decide once they bring the hammer down whether or not it was fair or unfair. And I want to say this. One of my friends who's a UT fan, he's a lawyer, and yesterday he was like telling me, all different paths and avenues to how this thing is screwed up 8 ways to Sunday, and it's not his fault, and don't blame him, and, UT didn't do anything wrong or whatever it may be. And the one thing that he did tell me, and I have no idea the factualness of this, and there's no way you can read some Tennessee Bobo site like VolQuest or whatever and expect to read the truth. But one thing he did tell me, and I didn't read this on VolQuest, he just told me this. But one thing he told me was that apparently the issue, and I don't know if this is the issue or not, is a flight that Nico Iamaleava took when he was still in high school and negotiating his NIL deal. And it was a charter flight, and Sprier Sports, the NIL collective, paid for it. And that it was not a rule that the collective could not pay for it until 2022, and he flew the flight in 2021. If that is in fact the case, if that is reality here, then I would side with Tennessee. But I can't imagine that if the NCAA was going to die on a hill, and let's just talk about how, again, this does feel like the true dying on the hill. That if the NCAA loses this and Florida State, and if they lose the NIL battles, it's over. Like, it's over. Like, we're going to Appomattox Courthouse and we're signing the treaty. I don't think that they would take an argument that can be so easily blown apart. I just don't think they do that. I don't think they're that stupid. And I think they're stupid. But I don't think they're that stupid. I cannot imagine that the NCAA, again, this is all of their power that they have had for 100 and however many years. I know that a couple years ago we celebrated the 150th year of college football, but I don't think the NCAA has been around that long. However long the NCAA has been around, I know that we have, bowed to the knee until the last couple of years. And when I see this stuff, I feel bad for Todd Gurley and Maurice Clarett and Johnny Manziel and all the people that bad guy wants to get paid for being good at football. And now it's like, yeah, who cares if they pay the players? I get that. This is their last shot at maintaining order. So I can't imagine that if this were their last shot at maintaining order, that their argument would be so weak that a guy can explain it to me at Corner Pub about how it's so easily dismissible. I cannot imagine it's that simple. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. One NFL job is hired. One NFL job is still open. It is shocking how that all came about. Vrabel, by the way, is still out there. Jason Fitz joins us next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
What about Vrabes? Where's Vrabes at in this entire thing? Bill Belichick? He's not doing anything. What,
Pete?
I have so many more questions now. That you're saying.
Vrabes. I believe that Vrabes would have been the guy in L.A. if Harbaugh didn't get the job there. If Harbaugh had gotten on the plane to go to Atlanta, I think Vrabel would have been the next guy that the Chargers turned to and would have got that job.
There you go. Adam Schefter on Pat McAfee saying, I think Vrabel was the number 2 guy with the Chargers. What do you make of that? Because when I first heard that, I was like, wow. You know, I don't think Vrabel's as bad as everybody's making him out to be. There's a lot of Titan fans that are celebrating that Vrabel doesn't have a job. And I think a large part of that is because you all were finger wagged by the media, not me, but by a lot of the media, Diana Rossini, Charles Robinson, Paul Kaharski, you know, finger wag this. Oh, if you fire Mike Vrabel, they'll have a new coach tomorrow, and he'll have a new job tomorrow, and you'll be sorry, and you should be lucky, Tennessee, that you have Mike Vrabel. And then Mike Vrabel didn't get any of these jobs. And I understand the validation of, you guys told me Vrabel was so great and nobody else in the NFL wants Vrabel. And then I hear Adam Schefter say, actually, the Chargers viewed him as their second option behind Jim Harbaugh. And so I thought about that for a second. So let me say this. Number one, I do not think that Mike Vrabel is a terrible, terrible coach that nobody in the NFL will want. In fact, I think Mike Vrabel will be the hottest candidate on the coaching market next year. Pete Carroll and Belichick, I hate to say it, I think they're done. They're just too old. You know, when it comes to Belichick, if he sits out a year, he's going to be 73 years old. You can't hire a 73-year-old head coach and say, hey, this guy is going to be the future for our organization. And I don't buy the Andy Reid stuff. And if Andy Reid does retire, I think that Matt Nagy's going to get that job anyways. So push that to the side. Vrabel, I believe, will be a top candidate next year. Because Vrabel is still getting paid by the Titans, and so maybe they don't have to pay him as much because they offset some of that money. And so, I think Vrabel will be a very hot candidate. But then I go back to, again, what Adam Schefter said right there, which was that he was the number 2 choice for the Chargers. And I started thinking to myself, well, that's pretty good, right? And then I thought, wait a minute. The Chargers were always going to hire Jim Harbaugh. And Jim Harbaugh was always going to the Chargers. I know Harbaugh interviewed in Atlanta, and the Chargers interviewed a bunch of other people, but they were always going to be together. And here's why. Harbaugh could not go back to Michigan. It's not in the cards. He got suspended twice in the middle of the year for cheating. Regardless of whether or not you agree with him being suspended twice, he got suspended twice. So he was always going to the NFL. And the Chargers had the best job because they have the best quarterback. So congratulations to Mike Vrabel finishing second in a race that you were never going to win. So I don't think there's really a lot there. So I don't think the celebration that Vrabel didn't get a job or anything else is as pronounced as some Titan fans want to make it and take the victory lap they do. But I also don't think it matters that he finished second to the Chargers. The Chargers weren't hiring anybody else. Jason Fitz joins us now on the program, Fox Sports Radio, Yahoo Sports. We will be seeing Fitz out in Las Vegas next week. Fitz, let's start with this. Old buddy Ben Johnson of the Detroit Lions decides not to take a head coaching job. Now, I talked to a former general manager yesterday, and they said Ben Johnson wanted too much money. But then Joe texted me today when we were talking about this, and Joe said that, you mean to tell me the Commanders did not know what the ballpark for Ben Johnson was when they flew in the air to Detroit and they found out mid-flight? That makes sense. And yet at the same time, I can't imagine that he would rather stay offensive coordinator than take a head job. What is going on there in Detroit?
Yeah, he'd rather take a offensive. He'd rather stay. The very last thing, I just finished talking to Yahoo insider Charles Robinson about this very thing, and I asked him, why? How does Ben Johnson walk away from the Washington gig? And the immediate answer was he and his camp believe strongly that his portfolio basically is only going to grow, because you look around and you're tied to talent, you're tied to young talent, you're tied to a quarterback you like, you're in an offense where Dan Campbell gives you full autonomy to do whatever you want, however you want. You get to sort of flow and be your own man in that process, so you can afford to be super selective about the gig that you want. So at any portion of this organizational structure that you don't like, you won't take. And so, the couple of people I've talked to today said that there have been some candidates that haven't loved the way that they're going to structure things in the organization and who's answering to who. So I don't know if that's part of it, or if you're just not on the same page with everybody about what you want to do with your coaching staff. But what we've learned is that Ben Johnson intends to be very, very selective in every single thing that he has. He's got to book the coaches he wants. He wants all the coaches he wants in the way that he wants them, and he's willing to go back to Detroit to get that. And I don't think it's wrong necessarily that, he's going to be in a situation where as long as that offense keeps ticking, he's just going to keep making more money.
So here's what I don't believe. He's making probably $3 million right now as an offensive coordinator, right? I think 2 is probably more likely, but let's just say 3, high end, $3 million. And they said that he's got 2 more years left, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about $6 million guaranteed dollars. At a minimum, he's making $8 million as a head coach on a 5-year deal. That's $40 guaranteed million. I don't know a single person that would turn down $34 million, which is the difference between the two, for a second year in a row because he turned down the Panthers last year. I just don't believe that. And I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I think that Dan Campbell is so stupid that they know that in Detroit, that they are ultimately going to push him overboard and make Ben Johnson the head coach. And that's what Ben Johnson's camp knows, and that's why Ben Johnson's staying.
Yeah, but even if that's the case, he's not going to make more money. And what happens if Dan Campbell keeps moving? Like, if they just keep getting to the NFC Championship game, do you think the Lions are going to fire him? I don't.
I think the Lions should fire him for what happened on Sunday.
Yeah, I don't. And I don't think the Lions – I think the Lions are outrageously happy right now. Like, there isn't – so even if we play your theory out and he goes to the NFC Championship game next year and loses the exact same way, they firing him? I don't think so.
Oh, they
so
have
to do this multiple years in a row. I just don't think that even if that happened, what's his return on investment at that point? Like, so if in 2 years he gets a head coaching job in Detroit, we think that Detroit was going to offer him more than $15 million a year on a 6-year guaranteed contract. Like, I just think sometimes these, like, you're talking about so much money. If he's looking around, he's like, I'm happy and we never have to work again, so the money doesn't have to be the only issue. I mean, like I said to you a couple of weeks ago, the reason I thought Harbaugh was staying in Michigan is that I've got credible sources that have told me he was offered $140 million at Michigan. So, he turned down roughly $50 million to go to the NFL. Like,
well, did he get his get-out-of-jail-free card, though? Like all that talk about how if they punish him, he still gets his money. Did he get that in that offer? Because I think that might have been
in the final offer. They were willing to give that. Michigan was willing to give him that in their final 11th hour offer. They were willing to give him that.
That's embarrassing.
But even so that I just think that at some point, there is a point for a lot of people where you've made more money than you can spend. And if you're at that spot where you're living in Detroit and you're looking around at your family and you're like, well, we've got $5-6 million in the bank. We never have to work again. Financial advisor says that we're good. So I want to be selective about the next opportunity. Like, most of these coaches believe that it's not going to be their last shot, right? So for him, I do think there's a chance where you look around. You turned down the guaranteed money last year. You turned down the guaranteed money this year. You're just waiting for whatever your dream job is.
Yeah, I just don't believe that. That's great. I just don't believe it. That there's got to be something else there. Maybe it's like, hey, next year the Cowboys might be open, the Eagles might be open, so let's think about – that's one thing. But the idea that, like, oh, no, we're good with $6 million, we don't need 40, I don't buy that. And I also –
I will tell you to your point quickly that I've talked to a couple of former coaches, and coaches and their agents do look at 2-year cycles. So part of what they do in any opportunity is look at it and say, what jobs do we think will be open next year, and would we rather wait for one of those? I've talked to a couple of former coaches and a couple of former agents, or a couple current agents that have told me that. So that it is possible that they looked at the landscape and said, last year, okay, well, there's going to be a better job open. And maybe they're looking at the game landscape again this year and saying, hey, maybe the Cowboys are coming open. Like, we'd rather sit around and wait for that job. And that is possible for sure.
Jason Fitz is our guest here, Yahoo Sports, Fox Sports Radio. Fitz, who gets the Washington job, and is Vrabel in play for that? And if not, why not?
So I don't think Vrabel's in play for it, but I don't know the answer for why. I only say that because a couple of people I've talked to have not mentioned his name as being in play for it. So I honestly don't know who the answer is to this. They've made it abundantly clear that they wanted Ben, and he didn't want them, and so now they're a little bit back to the drawing board with it. I think they wanted a splashy offensive hire, but seems like the final candidates they're looking at are all defensive guys at this point. So I've heard Dan Quinn multiple times as a name to keep an eye out there for it, but, man, the later they get into this cycle, I think the harder it's going to be. Like, we also got to keep in mind as you get this late into the hiring cycle that they're behind on building your entire staff, right? So this is going to be really interesting. I think as late as they're now going to hire, they better have somebody that comes in with a book that they know of people that are willing to come work for them. So, I've heard Dan Quinn a couple of times, but I don't think Washington expected this. I think they were caught flat-footed.
Jason Fitz is with us. Do you agree with the way Dan Campbell coached on Sunday?
I don't think – look, I would have taken the points. So, no, I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't think that I think sometimes you got to look at the whole situation.
I'd fire his ass if I owned that team.
No, I wouldn't. There's no way.
I would give him the Grady Little treatment. You remember Grady Little? Didn't take Pedro out of the 2003 ALCS, fired him, brought in Francona. That's what I would do.
You're having unprecedented success as an organization.
The Red Sox never won anything either, and then they got rid of the guy that screwed up when they got there, and they ended up winning the World Series.
So, A, it's not universally seen as a screw-up, and B, that's the style of who they've been throughout the course of the entire year that helped them get where they are, and C, I think the team and the organization and the players were all really comfortable with it. Like, I don't get any sense from anybody that the Lions have a hard time with it. I talked to Greg Olson for a long time this morning about analytics on something that's going to be up on Yahoo. And
that wasn't analytics, Fitz.
Yeah, it was.
No, if he was going by analytics, he would have gone for it before the end of the half. That analytics said go for it before the end of the half. He didn't. He's just sitting there on the sideline being like, go for it! Ah! That's what he is.
That's part of how he got there. But B, I questioned why did you take the points then and not take the points later? And and Olson's answer to that was shouldn't have taken the points in the first half. That was the mistake, not the other two. It's just the numbers are the numbers. As Olson pointed out, the chances of the success rate of a 48-yard field goal is not 100% either. So, I think there's probably some line in it. I just think that, to me, I want a coach that captures information from everybody. I want the offensive coordinator to suggest something and him say yes or no. And I want the analytics guy to suggest something and him say yes or no. And to me, the biggest fail was the second time when your offense only has 5 first downs in the first half and you have the opportunity for points. I personally say take the points. I don't care what the numbers say. Sometimes you just got to take the points because I thought the team got tighter the more times they didn't take the points.
Last one for you, Fitz. The Senior Bowl is this week. The Titans have the 7th pick, and the general manager, Rand Carthon, is not at the Senior Bowl. Instead, John Robinson's scouts that are now, I guess, his scouts, are there, as is the assistant general manager, and the president that reports to him on the football. I don't know. That's complicated, whatever. Rand Carthon's not at the Senior Bowl. Is it a big deal?
No, but I'll also say that, I'm a huge Raiders fan, lifelong diehard, and neither the head coach nor the GM of the Raiders is at the Senior Bowl either. Same thing. They sent other people from the scouting staff, and they sent their assistant GM, not Telesco. So I think teams more and more are, the Senior Bowl gives you the opportunity for an extra in-person interview. That's the most powerful thing it gives you in that situation. I would take that if I had the opportunity, but I think a lot of these staffs are just starting to sort of parse that out to other people and just trust that they'll get that information and use it as part of their evaluation. It's the in-person interviews that are going to matter way more, but sure. I think this actually speaks to some teams are just no longer valuing the Senior Bowl as much as I personally think they should. But since that's becoming more league standard, I don't think it's a big deal.
I'll say this right now. If I own the team and the guy who picked the players, I don't care what your title is or whatever, if you're the coach, and you were not in the Super Bowl and you were like, I think I'm going to pass in the Senior Bowl, I'd be like, you will be going to the Senior Bowl. Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports, Fox Sports Radio. Great stuff. Appreciate you as always.
Appreciate you, my friend. Have a great week.
Yep, we'll see you next week in Vegas. That was Fitz. How about that, Ian? Greg Olson says the screw-up from Dan Campbell was that they took the points before the half.
Everybody loves Greg Olson except you.
These guys are freaking crazy. Oh, yeah, that was bad to take that 3-possession lead. Are we watching the same game? Unbelievable. Barry Trotz will join us at 5 o'clock, and he's got some decisions to make. And the Young Bucks aren't making it easy either. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, Barry Trotz will join us just around the corner. By the way, Gator Tim has texted into the show, and he says, Ian, for what it's worth, he can't stand Greg Olson either.
Okay, so you're not the only one.
So yes, I am not the only one, and I do feel good about that. So I pulled up Money Puck. Now, Max gets mad at me every time I pull up this moneypuck.com, and I'd be lying to you if I told you that I knew what any of this, like how they got to these numbers. The same things that I get mad about whenever they put up on the screen. The analytics say go for it on 4th down, and I'm like, okay, how did we get those? How did we do that? I don't know. But I pulled this up at Money Puck. If the Predators beat the Kings tonight in regulation, they have a 49.7% chance of making the playoffs. So 50-50 if they win tonight. If they lose tonight in regulation, 36.8. So according to this, we're looking at a 13-point swing if the game is decided in regulation tonight one way or another. Now, all I have wanted all season long is one competitive playoff series. But I've been willing to sacrifice that for the good of the team if it means that the long-term goals are more met. And then I watched the Edmonton game on Saturday, which that is a team. Like, that team might win the Stanley Cup. And I thought the Predators played well in that game. I thought they played hard in that game. I just don't think that they had the firepower to compete with Edmonton's firepower. And I'm thinking, okay, now, with that being said, regardless of what this team decides to do in the next month, they're going to be competing for a playoff spot. Last year, they tore it apart, and they still were competing for a playoff spot. This year, if they decide to go all in, they'll be competing for a playoff spot. If they decide to tear it apart, they'll still be competing for a playoff spot. But the Milwaukee Admirals apparently don't lose anymore. And that is something that a lot of people are starting to at least look at. Specifically the goalie, who we talked about at length yesterday. And it's always, well, if you're going to tear it apart, if you're going to think future, you've got a goalie. And a lot of teams don't have goalies. And so the one thing I'll say is that they got a lot of these guys down in Milwaukee that are winning a lot of games. And I don't know if there's going to be spots for some of these guys to come up here the second half of the year to score some goals, or if the plan is to keep them down there, keep winning all those games, keep scoring goals at the AHL level so that next year they might be better. But we are going to talk to the person who does make those decisions. Barry Trotz is going to join us next. And again, I think that's the question is, hey, we all see that Milwaukee doesn't lose anymore. We all see that this goalie, Ian, what was it that we said in his last 10 games? Wasn't it something like a 9.47 save percentage?
9.41 like maybe you said?
9.41. 9.41. Unbelievable. And so then, begs the question, do you take calls on the goalie? Do you make calls on the goalie? Do you keep it all together? I don't know. Barry Trotz will join us next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Let me talk about FanDuel Sportsbook. That's right. I love FanDuel Sportsbook. Oh, by the way, Chase has texted me and says he loves Greg Olson and will not take Greg Olson's slander. You guys are crazy. Guy talks too much. Every time they run a play, he talks for the 40 seconds in between that play and the next play. There's no conversation going on. It drives me crazy. Anyways, FanDuel Sportsbook is my official sportsbook app, and they are getting excited about the Super Bowl. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch and, of course, watching the game and placing the best bets. I have told you, after last week, I am not interested at all, in betting against Patrick Mahomes. And I would advise that you not bet against Patrick Mahomes either. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet who will win the Super Bowl, but you can also place bets on which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today and you get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/JGM and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 and over and present in Tennessee. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line 1-800 889-9789. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Studios. Bridgestone Arena tonight. Predators early start time, 6:30, taking on the LA Kings. Barry Trotz, Predators general manager, is with us. Kind enough, by the way, to move from Tuesday to Wednesday since.
No, that's good. I like doing it live.
Well,
we get to chat, and you fill me in on what's going on in the sporting world, which is absolutely fantastic.
There you go. Let's start with this. I watched you guys on Saturday, and I saw a really, really good Edmonton team. I saw a tough fight, but not the result you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I watched a game Monday night. I did not see the same kind of game that I felt like I saw Saturday. Also, not the result you probably wanted on Monday. Here you go. You got one game right here, and then right after that, it's into the break. People are wondering, are we starting to make decisions about the season yet, where this may go, where it might not go?
Yeah, absolutely. I just go back to watching our team. You know, we've had a couple games at home here where I thought we could get better results, no question. And then we've gone on the road and got, fantastic game, I thought, in Minnesota. I thought we played as hard as we could in Edmonton.
Yeah.
We played a heck of a game. Their power play, the star power that they have, we just couldn't match it. And so they got a victory. I thought I saw our first period, and I was actually talking. I wasn't on that trip. I was working the phones a little bit back here. And I had talked to Scott Nickel, who was on the trip with the team. And, we liked the fact that we were up 3-0, but I didn't like our game.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we looked tired. If you think about the last couple of weeks, we went from I'm going back to when we had we played Dallas. We came back home. I think we played the Islanders. We took off. We went out west, worked our way back, played a game. Then we went out to Minnesota, Edmonton, and then we got all the way to Ottawa. And I thought we looked tired. And Ottawa, you look at the standings, and for people who haven't paid attention to Ottawa this year, I mean, they might be one of the top, I'm going to say top 6, 7 most talented teams in the National Hockey League. They've had a horrible year in terms of getting points, but they just, the first period, we got the 3 goals. I thought they came easy, and then I thought they got to their game. They're quick, their skill, all that, and we just couldn't match it, and we looked tired, and I thought we were fortunate to get a point. I thought the Juice made some huge saves, and we had a chance to get the second point in the overtime, and that's just a little bit of an indecision with one of our forwards and Yos on a play, and then they come back and score. So, we'll take the point because I thought that we might not get any points, but at the same time, every point is so valuable. Obviously, tonight against the Kings are incredibly important, and the 13-point swing on analytics that could be a big swing because now whoever wins this game, you got to win 2 games to more than they do. So it's a really important game, and I think both teams realize it. I think for us, we're in a chance where at the start of the year I said if we're playing, having a chance to get in the playoffs, late in the year, playing meaningful games with our group on transition. That's what I want, and we're here at this point. So these are great teaching moments. LA. Expectations on them are been a lot higher. This is a team that we were talking Stanley Cup, type of material, and they've had a real rough patch here. So I think both teams are looking forward to the break. What I do know is the team that can stay most focused tonight, execute at the highest level, and play the right way, and not thinking about the break and not worrying about getting nicked up so that you can't go on your break. The team that has a little bit of that edge will win a hockey game, plain and simple for me, because these games right before All-Star breaks or Christmas breaks, those games, it's all about which team can hold the professionalism the best and the focus the best.
Has this season where we are right now, has this taken you in a direction where you would think about either labeling yourself as a buyer or a seller?
Yeah, I think I right now I've made a lot of phone calls probably in the last couple of weeks. Just like you'd be surprised around the league, some teams that you'd say, oh, definitely they're going to be a buyer. I'm not so sure. I don't know the direction quite yet. I do and I don't. On some people I do. I know what direction I'm going in. There's a few others that I'm not sure yet. Probably the next 8-10 games will really dictate the fate of the rest of the players. We have a lot of UFAs right now, so you have to make some decisions. My role is twofold. A, I want this team to get in the playoffs, B, I don't want assets going out the door for free if they are there, and I have to listen to the possibilities. Right before you set me up here, we talked about goaltending.
Mhm.
Obviously I have to listen, and I don't have Juicy Saros out there, but it was written in one of the writers wrote that the marketplace has changed and maybe Saros's name comes back in. I was asked, and I said I'm not putting his name out there unless there is a game changer type of young prospect or player. So he's not out there, but if someone comes and knocks on the door and says, hey, we'll do this, then that's fine. But we do have some goaltending depth, which seems to be very valuable right now around the NHL. So we have to listen. We have to look at the possibilities, and we're going to make some decisions. And our team's going to help me make those decisions.
Mm-hmm. Barry Trotz is with us, presented by Gary Force Acura. So on the goalie front, there's not really a recent big-time top-of-the-league goalie that's been traded that would maybe set a precedent for this is what it would take to get a UC Saros, which makes me think that if somebody were to call you and say, hey, we need goaltending for our cup run, you would then almost have to name the price of, hey, this is what it would take. Have you even thought about that yet?
Yeah, no, I have to. I don't want to be take a call and go, okay, I'll get back to you. It might be one of those where, if this player's name comes up, then we're talking. If this player doesn't come up, then we're not even in the ballpark. So I don't want to waste anybody's time. If they do call, I want to be prepared. So we have talked with our pro scouts. We've also talked to our management group to have the right names that would be game changers, basically, if that call ever came.
Mm-hmm. So if you were willing to take that call, what does that mean for Askarov? Because he's been playing great at Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about how in the past that he was, at the beginning of the year, a top prospect and has been growing and growing and growing. So where do you feel like he is in terms of being ready for the NHL and for that type of job?
Well, I think he's taken, I always say that there's certain steps that players have to take. I think he's come in and he's done really well. He's a talent physically. His game has started to settle down. He's got a very good team in front of him as well, but he's been a big part of getting that confidence for that team. And his game is quieted down. And the next step is being the game-changing, consistent guy that everybody goes, wait, we just can't score on this guy anymore. And so, he's come up and he's had a game success with us. So he's still in that process, but you also have to remember, he's still 21, 22 years old. Mm-hmm. And there's still a lot of growth. You see a lot of these players. I mean, this is the time of year where you will see, you look at and you can go back to the analytic numbers, all that. Players had great success. A lot of our young guys, they came out of the chute, they scored, they had some offensive success. And then as the season goes on, things tighten up.
Sure.
And all of a sudden you see that, their points per game is cut in half or even more, and they go on these long droughts. And it's same with other players too, even in the veteran players. It gets tightened up and ramped up defensively. The games become more meaningful. The travel has more effect on their performance and the grind, mentally and physically. Just like I knew our team was tired in Ottawa, we'd gone through 5 different time zones in 3 days. Played a couple games, we went back and forth, and I was looking at the 2 and 3 weeks and how much travel we had. We had a lot of travel, and it takes its toll. So these players are going through it. The great thing is you had mentioned Milwaukee. We've got some guys in Milwaukee who I'd love to get up here, and they could probably give us a little jolt of energy, hopefully a little bit of offense, adrenaline, all that. And but we haven't had a lot of injuries. This year we've been very, very, very fortunate.
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood, yeah. And they may come all in a week here, but so some guys haven't had the opportunity yet. the positive to that is they keep growing their brand, as they say in Milwaukee. I think they've won like 10 in a row. You know, the goaltending is there, the defensive play is there. Guys like you know, Leroux and Jankowski and Afanasyev, and I can go down the list. Sveshkov, who I you know, usually doesn't play this many games, he's still playing well. Liam Foudy, who we picked up, just got a hat trick last night. His game is starting to really pick up. So we have a lot of those guys in that 19 or 20-year-old to 23-year-old category that are starting to build their brand. And when they get a chance to come up here, I think they're more ready, and they're going to have more confidence, and they've got lots of ice time. So I know if we do have some injuries, that's going to come internal. And hopefully we can get a boost from some of these guys.
Barry Trotz is again presented by Gary Force Acura. On the Saros front, you talked about, you know, hey, if somebody's going to pick up the phone and call me, it's got to be a game changer or I'm hanging up.
Yeah.
When it comes to game changer, at this point in the Predators process of where you started this thing and where you see it, is there a difference in terms of how you value an elite NHL player compared to an elite NHL prospect compared to what could be an elite draft pick? Is there a different way of valuing those? Like, would draft picks not be part of the discussion because, hey, no, we want so-and-so that can play right now for Saros, or how's that?
Yeah. Well, I think with draft choices, I mean, you look at the draft choices, we draft someone this year, I don't expect them to play for 4 or 5 years. So that value for where we are may not fit. If there is a prospect who's been drafted, you know, like we took Reed Schaefer from Edmonton, he had already, you know, he was drafted. He already saw what he was going to be in terms of maybe a player, because he's already, you know, he's a little bit older. That made a little more sense for our evolution of turning over players as well. So that all being said, you know, a player that's playing in the National Hockey League that's, say, 22 years old, I have a lot of interest in, obviously, because he's playing in the league already. He's more ready. You know that there might be some more upside there. You can work with him. He can still grow and develop. So they all have different values, no question. And it also depends on what you're looking for. But, you know, I'm not adverse to a little bit older player who's 27. That could be a game changer as well.
When it comes to these kids that are down in Milwaukee, and you brought them all up, whether it's Svechkov or Leroux or Kimmel or whomever, when does the moment come that even if you don't have an injury, you would point at one of them and say, okay, it's time to bring them up to Nashville. It's time to put them on a line with Ryan O'Reilly or Philip Forsberg, or it's time, especially given the fact that outside of that first line, offense has been hard to come by so far.
Yeah, well, I think it's talking, you know, I think how Bruno's done a really good job is he's, you know, some of the guys that are maybe don't have their complete game, he's used sheltered minutes against sheltered opponents or cautious on certain opponents, and we've sort of built other type lines to handle, say, some of the big boys. Like it's a really tough task, and I've talked to a lot of people over years, and I've been a coach for a long time, and I've seen it, you know, up close and personal. It is hard for a young guy who's not ready there in his total development to go against, you know, Connor McDavid. And all of a sudden you're hoping that, hey, you know, it's easy to say, hey, let's just bring everybody up from Milwaukee and let them develop in the National Hockey League. That is so incorrect thinking for a lot of, you know, for a lot of reasons, because you're going up against the best in the world, and you're trying to survive in the league, and you know, development is about thriving, having success, being confident. And I've seen many teams, and I'm not going to point at any teams that tried to do that. I've talked to the people who on those teams, and the one thing they said is that, you know what, we put our kids in, and we said, yeah, well, they'll develop in the NHL, and go head to head against these guys, and all they tried to do was survive, and they never developed. They never got their confidence. They never could get the production. So it's very important, and I like what Bruno's doing, is that he's giving them a little bit more, and then when he sees them failing, he pulls them back a little bit, and then, tries to get their confidence going and put them back in and do that. So it's a delicate balance, and unless you're in the room, it's really hard to understand where a player is mentally and even physically. And you see the struggles of a guy like Cody Glass this year.
Mm-hmm.
He's had a really difficult year, but now he seems to be coming out of it. I think Cody's put together some of his best games the last couple of outings. At the same time, my expectations in the long run for Cody, a guy like Cody Glass, and that is a lot higher than it is right now. But we understand that you sort of hit like rock bottom. You got to build him up again, and
Sure.
you got to slowly get his confidence and get some success. So those are the things that you, as a coach, you have to be in the room to sort of have that feel where a guy is mentally and physically.
So the last one for you on this, though, like Tomasino, Evangelista, Parsonen, who's been down, Glass, you brought him up. Has it been disappointing that not one of those guys has really popped? Yeah.
Yeah, it is a little bit. They've popped in times. Like,
that Tomasino goal the other night was beautiful.
Yeah, they show you flashes. There's no question. But can you do it on a consistent basis? Early, Tommy Novak, I thought, came out and was putting up points left and right, got hurt. And since then, he's sort of flatlined a little bit. A guy like Parson, who we played out of position. The reason I put Parse down, I think he can play for us right now. He can contribute, but we took him out of the position that he's most comfortable in, and has had the most success in is at center ice. And center ice is such a key area. So I talked to Parson. I said, I'm going to put you back to the position that you love.
Mm-hmm.
And the best place to do that is get you in Milwaukee doing that so that you can do it up here when you get back, feeling it again and getting your confidence and getting your touches and all those reps that you need. And so that's what we did, because I really, truly believe that we're going to have to put him at center. So that's sort of the process. So the next couple of weeks are going to be very telling. The next 30 days are probably going to be very telling, and in that final week before the trading deadline, I think things are going to happen. There might be one or two trades beforehand because teams want to get ahead of it. That's fine. But I think the next 30 days, everybody's posturing, everybody's seeing what all the deals that maybe could happen, how they can improve their team. There's going to be some injuries. There's going to be different situations that change. And then that last week will be pretty hectic, I think. So we're going to listen to everything. We have a lot of UFAs. I got Cole Smith signed. There's a couple other people that I want to talk to for sure and see where their camps are. And if it doesn't make sense camp-wise in terms of numbers that I feel where they fit with our team in the near future and also long-term, then we'll have to move on. It's nothing personal. These guys have done a fantastic job this year holding it together. So they're a very likable group. They're a group that cares about each other, and but we want to get in the playoffs, and we want, like I said, we have to stay to the long-term plan of trying to build a Stanley Cup winner here.
So we always do this the last segment before Preds games, and we got an early game today. Predators Game Day is presented by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. List your home, my agent, TJ Anderson, to get your home seen, heard, and sold. TNT, you get nervous knowing Kenny Albert is in the building? The great Kenny Albert calling the game tonight?
Not at all. Actually, I'm very, very fortunate that Kenny called me last night and said, would you like to join us for dinner? I wasn't able to, but I said, I'll come out. And
you were working the phones last night.
I'll come out and join you guys after dinner, and we did, and we told some old stories, and between Kenny and a guy like Eddie Olchuk, there's some good hockey stories that I never knew of. So it's good to have a good laugh and hear some of those old stories.
I mean, it's got to be cool to be playing, with all these other teams on break, to be playing tonight on TNT. Again, early start time, 6:30 instead of 7, but it's got to be cool to have that in the building and to kind of have a big game that has playoff implications like it does tonight.
It was cool for me. I hope the players and everybody else are that way. But yeah, it is cool. I think depending on what your position is, there's guys that I always find this is really strange because you got a break on the front end for some teams that they're tweeting, "Hey, I'm on the beach, I'm here, and we've got a big game tonight." And then they got the All-Star break, and then we'll be doing the same to those guys when they're back playing. So it is a strange time because there's a lot of, as I say, there's a lot of guys that overlap in the league that have friendships. So, a guy's going, "Oh, you got a big game tonight? Okay, well, my big game is to have a nice dinner, and I'm in, this strange country, strange warm country, and there's guys in Dubai. I mean, that's halfway around the world, and they're reaching out to guys. So it's all good.
I wouldn't spend that much time traveling if I had like a limited break.
Oh, yeah.
It's one thing after the season, I'll spend, a whole day traveling, but I wouldn't do that in that period of time. Barry, thank you so much. Again, I know you guys are very, very busy.
Yep.
Big game tonight. Appreciate your time. Appreciate your candidness as always.
Always. And you have a good time. We'll see you after the All-Star break.
Absolutely. Barry Trotz, as always, is presented by Gary Force Acura here on our program. Ian, let's go ahead and hit it right now with Predators Game Day, if we could. I threw that on you, so I apologize for that. There you go.
Hockey night in Smashville.
Puck over to Yossi. Here's one-timer, he scores!
Bringing you the keys to victory and the latest storylines surrounding the Nashville Predators. This is Predators Game Day, brought to you by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. Now on Stillman and Company.
That's right. Predators Game Day is presented by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty. Online at tjandersonhomes.com. TJ Anderson, that's my agent. Get your house seen, heard, and sold with TJ. Barry told you all you need to know tonight as the Kings and the Predators do battle here, 6:30 on TNT, special start time, and of course, right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. This is a big one for the playoffs because that one wild card spot, who knows who's going to be able to claim it. The Predators right now out of a wild card spot, but tied with both LA and St. Louis with 54 points. So it is a big one. Max has you on the pregame show next. Enjoy the game, Stillman and Company. We'll see you all tomorrow at 2.